What are the negative outcomes then?
Negative outcomes of dating someone who's a lot older than you?
Then let's compare them to the positive outcomes.
Sure. So if we look at from what now granted, I don't have a ton of data right now, Andrew, so I'm not going to cite direct data.
So what's the negative outcomes?
But it is very easy for someone to get groomed in that type of relationship in which someone is a lot older than them and they are swooning over them and they are completely blinded by everything. I can't say that?
No, it's totally fine. Just for the sake of the conversation, though, can you just clarify grooming? Just so we understand what does that mean? Talking about
sure,
when you say
I'm
grooming.
happy to do that. It's basically just this idea of when you're like emotionally priming someone or you're going after someone who is much less emotionally developed than you are for the sake of manipulating them or being in a sense that you are much more developed than they are.
Got it. And would you argue that men have trouble with displays of emotion, empathy, and various things like this?
Sure. And
that women have a higher emotional intelligence?
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think in certain cases
you don't think women have a higher emotional intelligence?
I think largely they do, yes.
Okay, so then women who have the higher emotional intelligence and men who have repressed emotion, if they're dating, isn't the woman in this situation of power here?
Nice, Andrew. I don't think that 41-year-old women should also date 18-year-old men. So I'm being consistent here.
Why not?
Okay, I want to move on to something else.
I don't care. I want to finish this.
No, I'm not.
I don't care. I want to finish it.
I'm not going to say anything.
Stop running, bro.
No, I'm not going to say anything.
Stop fucking running. Stop running. You're right here having a debate about your views, especially when it comes on feminism. A big feminist talking point is that men are predatory if they're older men and they want to date younger women. That's a massive talking point. There's no way for you to run from it. Now justify the fucking view.
It's fucking weird, dude.
That doesn't mean shit.
Is. Why don't you date a 41-year-old? You are 41. Why would you not date a 41-year-old?
What if you want to have a bunch of kids?
Then you can date someone who's younger, but why would you want to date someone who's fresh out of high school?
Well, wait a second. What if the age of high school ended at 15?
Oh, okay.
By the way, let me ask you this, right? You think that is weird because they're freshly out of high school?
Sure.
So are the fucking men that 18-year-olds are dating at 18, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're in a similar stage of development.
Weird. Why would a woman want to date a man who's fresh out of high school?
Because she's also out of high school, dude. What the fuck?
That's like dating your brother.
No, wait, what?
Yeah, it's like dating your brother. It's stupid rhetoric.
Okay, Andrew. Yeah,
that's not a justification. Who cares? Like, why is it if they're fresh out of college that's better?
I wanted to write down Andrew's vision for the world and my vision of the world. So why don't we just add that to the list? That there's nothing wrong with 41-year-olds. Is there?
You have not made a justification for why there is.
Is there ever an? Yeah, because I'm not.
Because you can't. You fucking can't. No, you don't get to run.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You don't get to run. This is a massive feminist talking point. The age discrepancy between older men. They say that they're predatory. You made the argument they're predatory.
Men are inherently predatory.
Only if they want to date younger women.
Younger and 18-year-olds is
okay.
So
41
different.
and 20.
It's still kind of weird.
41 and 24.
Yeah, that's fine. There's
based on what?
There's not a precise line,
Andrew. You're a fucking liar.
Hold on.
You don't know why.
We can say that it is okay for someone to date someone who is 40, and if they're 41, and not okay at 18. And that doesn't mean that there's a precise age right there that this age is too much, this age is too little. I think it's easy to be like, you shouldn't date someone.
So if you observed, but you wouldn't make laws against it.
Laws against it?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't make laws against it.
But they shouldn't do it.
Yeah, people should not do things a lot, even if
there is. So I would make this case, but on this, that's really weird because we do tailor laws towards predatory sexual behavior in a big way, and I'm sure you're for those laws.
Sure.
Why wouldn't you be, if you consider this to be a predatory sexual behavior, why would you not want to target laws towards this, though? That's fucking weird.
Here we go. And the reason is because I think that, once again, you can prioritize different values here. I think autonomy of women is fine. If an 18-year-old genuinely wants to marry someone who's a lot older, I think it's a bad decision. I think she's likely it's going to lead to a lot of negative emotional outcomes, but I don't think the state should necessarily bar her from doing it because she's over the age of 18. Okay?
Okay, no, that actually doesn't track.
Absolutely.
So when you're talking about, you made the bold claim that it's weird, and the reason it's weird and bad is because you think that at least most of these relationships must be predatory?
It has a high potential for it. Not all of them are.
I didn't say all. What does most mean?
Yeah.
You think most of them are?
I think most of them can be.
What other criteria would you have for most of this thing, hang on, which is sexually
Fine.
predatory.
We have to draw the
Hang
line.
on, sexually predatory shouldn't be outlawed?
We have to draw the line somewhere, Andrew. So if you would like to say that maybe, actually, I've heard that before, that maybe you should raise the age of consent to like 21, or there should be like Romeo and Juliet laws so that it does get higher, so that a 41-year-old couldn't date an 18-year-old.
Would you be for that?
I think in those cases, there's a good argument to be made there.
Okay, can we disenfranchise 18-year-old women then?
What do you mean disenfranchise? How
Make sure that between 18 and 21...
Because I can't have sex with you, you can't vote. What the fuck, dude?
Why, wait a second. Isn't the justification for why they can't vote the same as why they can't have sex?
No, because sex and voting are very different. People make uninformed decisions.
Why shouldn't adults be able to have sex with 16-year-olds? Isn't it for the same reason the 16-year-old shouldn't vote?
No.
Oh. What? It's not?
Do you think if a 16-year-old votes or doesn't vote, they're going to be deeply traumatized?
Well, I mean, if enough 16-year-olds do, yeah. Yes, they could be. Absolutely.
Do you think that parallels the harm of child abuse?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that, like, if a 19-year-old has sex with a 16-year-old, the 16-year-old is deeply traumatized, honestly.
Okay.
Do you think so? Do you think that, like, not really.
It's weird.
I would say that that's like
19 and 16.
Yeah, I'd say that's a little gross, but
Yeah.
like, what about 1917? Yeah, you don't really care, right?
There's always going to be a line here, and there's always
so the
different
thing is
things.
like, if that's the case, if you're like, they're 19 years old and 17 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's still predatory behavior from your view.
No, I don't think necessarily it is.
But it should stay illegal.
No, I didn't say that.
It should be legal.
19 and 17. There are some Romeo and Juliet laws that I would say I'm in favor of.
How is the 1-year displacement then from 16 to 17? That is stupid.
What do you mean?
Like, if you give the displacement, you're like, at 17 years old to 19 years old, that's too much, but at 16, it's
Andrew,
not. That is fucking.
Of course, of course, there's going to be an arbitrary distinction. I'm not saying there can't be an arbitrary.
That's super arbitrary.
I think 2 years in that age gap is as large as you should go.
Yeah. So but the question here still remains, right? What about 35 and 18?
I think if you're older than like
29,
23 or 24, you shouldn't be dating someone fresh out of high school.
Yeah. What is the fresh out of high school thing?
Because you're in a different stage.
You could also be a CEO at 18,
you're
right?
in a different stage of life. Yeah, Andrew. Are most 18-year-old women CEOs?
Yeah, are most 18-year-old women dating 35-year-old men?
No, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, but the thing is like, when it comes to attraction, right, most people are generally attracted and meet people within their same demographics and groups. That is the case with all dating.
Sure.
So if it's the case that this woman is seeking older men, right, if she's seeking them, what's the problem?
I don't think she should be seeking people that old. I think it's going to lead to her.
So I consent. You don't consent.
No.
Yeah, you don't consent.
Hold on, but Andrew, you
don't consent to their relationship.
You make the same claim for people under the age of 18.
How?
You don't consent to someone who is 41 dating someone who's 16.
Yeah, but I gave justifications for that. You have given none for this. You just say it's hyper-predatory. Sometimes
still
maybe.
Predatory.
Sometimes maybe.
I think someone who wants to date someone that young, it's revealing.
Sometimes maybe.
I think more times than not.
No, I'm not sure. Like, you haven't made that case, though. That's the case I'm waiting for.
You're almost like asking me to argue against why it's wrong for adults to have sex with, like, who are fundamentally children at that point.
So 18-year-olds are fundamentally children?
I think to a 41-year-old, there's almost no difference. Virtual zero difference.
Can you tell me what makes 18-year-olds children?
I'm not saying children in the legal sense of the term.
No, that's not. Whatever sense.
I'm saying they are much younger.
I know they're younger.
And they have
what makes them fucking children, bro?
They obviously had much less life experience than you have.
Okay, so that's what makes them children? That they have less life experience?
To a 41-year-old? Yeah. Absolutely.
How does that make him a child?
Functionally a child? Absolutely.
They're not functionally a child. Why do they just like not have fucking agency because they're young?
I'm not saying they don't have agency. I'm saying there are better and worse decisions that people can make.
What's the bads in this decisions? That keeps being my question. You won't answer. What are the bads? What? You got nothing, dude. You never have anything. When I put you to the question, you fucking run every time. What are the bads versus the goods? Can we go over them? No.
I'm done talking about 40.
Dude,
I'm done talking about 41-year-olds.
You're such a coward, dude.
I'm a
coward.
I'm a coward because I'm refusing to engage
anymore.
You're
refusing to engage with a legitimate social question from your view about feminism. That's what you're doing.
Okay.
This is a very common talking point from feminists that women are being hyper predatorized by older men, and then when I say, okay, well, let's get into whether or not that's happening or not, you fucking run. It's pure cowardice. I'm going to go have a smoke while you let super chat.
If I asked you to justify, if I asked you to like justify something like PDF files, would you do it?
Bro, am I asking you to justify PDF files?
No, but I'm saying they're in a similar category. I'm saying
here's
they're
what
in a similar category.
I would make great arguments for why it is that PDF files should be fucking roasted and put up against a wall. Mm-hmm. That's what I would do.
Okay.
You're making zero fucking arguments. None.
Okay, Andrew.
You suck, dude.
Okay.
All right, we're going to read a couple chats.
So I want to start with the idea of how feminism and Marxism aren't contrary to each other. So I've read a lot of Marxist feminist literature, especially from Dubois, and they do actually seem to be a contradiction. So through first wave feminism to modernity, feminism has single-handedly put more women in the hands of rich industrialists than any other single movement which has ever existed. Rich capitalist industrialists are now basically in charge of women. Women are part of the market workforce now. They never were. As part of the market workforce, they have now accrued almost as much debt in 100 years as men, which is incredible. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. There's only a few. One of the big ones is student loans, but I mean, they're almost on point with everything else. There's very, very few market indicators where they hold significantly less debt than men do.
From my understanding, the only place where women do hold more debt is student loans. Men hold more in credit cards and. It's
true. Well, credit cards, it could be that we don't know because we get it from the credit card reporting agency, but it's like a 2% margin. So maybe they hold less, maybe they hold, I'm not sure, but it's not significant. Like none of these thresholds I look at look very significant to me. So what I'm trying to figure out is Marxism, and maybe we can clear up the semantic here too, but Marxism is looking for a stateless society where where capitalism is gone, right? Uh-huh. So if capitalism is gone, how is feeding millions upon millions of women to the capitalist machine via feminism a good idea for Marxism? It makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about first wave feminism, I don't like to necessarily define feminism based on its wave, because I think it ignores certain sects within feminism that are outside of that, as well as kind of puts it in a Western purview. But I will say, obviously, there are different modes of feminism that we've seen in place throughout history, and I would just say this was liberal feminism, which obviously is towards the movement of upward mobility within capitalism.
Yeah, but why would you support that?
I wouldn't. I would be against liberal feminism.
Then how are you a feminist? Well, what kind of feminist are you?
Marxist intersectional feminist.
Okay, yeah, Marxist intersectional, but
right.
You did rely on first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave feminism.
Yeah, so there is progression, obviously, over time. I'm sure you have, I know I've heard you say that with your Christian populism, your plan is 300 years. So obviously there's going to be different steps that you take over time. I think when it comes to, if we're going to talk about liberal feminism and women entering the market when it comes to economic work, is that one of the ways we see that women have faced oppression or marginalization or subjugation, whatever term you want to use, is obviously patriarchy's construction of dependency on men.
But they were more liberated. So men held the debt, not women. So I would argue immediately.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I would argue immediately that because women now hold so much debt, they're less liberated than they ever have been, at least in this nation. So I would point you to things like before they had the right to vote, the 19th Amendment, mm-hmm. they were able to pass the 18th Amendment. That was literally due to the women's temperance movement. And they did not have the right to vote at that time, but they had so much moral political power that they were able to pass that. So they definitely had political power and they had no debt. I don't see how this is more liberating.
Well, I don't think a lot of people had debt during that time.
Yeah, men had a lot of debt. Men, I mean, they had all the debt.
Individual debt?
They had all the debt. All of it.
Sure, but
1% to 2% maybe for women.
Sure. So, I mean, if we're talking about, do I think debt is a good thing? No, that would be a critique against capitalism. The critique that with feminism in that specific instance that you've given is that the only way to get access to the material goods of life is obviously through money. And so when women are able to participate in the market, then they are dependent on men in order to get housing, to get food, to get shelter, so on and so forth. Or, they're paid very low wages. And so I think expanding that market then creates more individual opportunities to where you don't have to get married, to where you can have more autonomy in your choice.
Yeah, but this is really this is a very odd position that I don't think stacks up very well. So if the idea is women need to be able to gain more materialism, that is in conflict with Marxism, which is saying
agree. I'm
that
saying
women,
that's under capitalism.
Yeah, but we live in capitalism.
Sure.
And we did then.
I understand that.
So the thing is like, it seems very contradictory to me to say, well, okay, access to materialism.
Hold on, sorry. What's going on?
I was trying to turn off the thing, that's my bad.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
We have a new.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So it's just really bizarre to me when you say women need to be able to access materialism in order to be less oppressed. When now women they have. By the way, I mean their student loan debt alone is insane. They're now under the yoke of capitalism more significantly than they ever have been because of this accruement of debt. So it seems like you're just feeding them into the system while calling it liberation when rich industrialists owned them then and own them now.
So, I mean, it's a more intersectional look at that. Like, I do agree with you that capitalism in itself and like the concept of debt is oppressive. So yes, you are correct when you say that assessment. But if we're looking at the intersection, what's the alternative under capitalism for women to be dependent on access to the basic materials?
That seems far and away to me to be a way better system if you wanted to actually institute Marxism. So I'll explain why. If he were to use the accelerationist argument, which it sounds like you're trying to do, move into accelerationism, we would just have fascism. Like that's what we usually end up with.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Right-wing authoritarianism.
Well, I know what you mean by fascism. Can you repeat your point, though?
Yeah. So if the idea is women need to be moved into the rich industrialist market for some reason because it's more liberating for them to have more materialism, which it seems to be completely the opposite. Because
more opportunity.
For what, though? To ingratiate more materialism?
No, I would even just say like the standard means of living.
Materialism.
I don't know, like,
well,
we need housing, right? Is that materialism?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is.
Okay.
Like, depending on the size of the house. And, I mean, so when you say housing, what does that encompass? Like a commie block? Like a stone commie block where it's like little tiny...
I think we can agree like on what basic necessities humans need in order to function within society. And I would say housing would be definitely a
Sure, but
tenet.
how big?
I think it would depend, obviously, based on need.
Yeah, right. So
utility.
if it's moving off of need, right? Mm-hmm. I would say that people need very little space.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
So if this is the case, though, introducing women into the capitalist market, right, where now rich industrialists own their labor, which they do, in order to give them the right to vote about stuff that's kind of meaningless ultimately towards themselves. What was the point of that for Marxism? It's totally counterintuitive.
Well, I'm not saying it's a movement towards Marxism. I'm saying that that's obviously like a liberal feminist movement, which is upward mobility within capitalism so that you can have access to...
So you don't support feminism?
I don't support liberal feminism.
But that's the only type of feminism we've had here.
In terms of certain movements, sure. I guess it would depend on how you classify certain movements. But when we're talking about like capitalist critique, those who think that women would find liberation having the same access to capitalist opportunities as men is a liberal feminist idea.
But I don't understand then. So do you support Western feminism or not?
I don't, if you want to label it as that Western feminism.
Like, well, okay, so the only feminism that I can point to is either the feminism here or we can talk about communist feminism, but that was liberalized as well.
I disagree. I think we can see like when the Black Panthers in the 60s and 70s, that's where womanism was born out of, which is also Marxist theory.
Yeah, sure, but it was also part of a feminist movement.
Right.
The sexual liberation was a big part of what was going on in the 60s with Black Panther and female liberation, too. So I'm just curious, though, first wave feminism, you agree, essentially fed all women into this massive capitalist machine, whereas they did not have to participate in it before.
Again, like I think that's a really exclusionary idea of first wave feminism, because there were also like feminists who were abolitionists. There were also feminists who were poor, who wanted more rights for the working class, and those were kind of ignored. So I think if you want to label first wave feminism as essentially the suffragette movement, and the means to enter capitalist, I don't think that's all encompassing of feminism.
First wave feminism is definitely responsible for millions upon millions upon millions of women entering into the workforce under rich capitalist industrialists. Single-handedly responsible for that.
Okay.
What else would it be that would be responsible for that?
Well, I think that's obviously what's at the forefront, but there are other sects of feminism that we're dealing with. Abolition, we're dealing with
they never had any political power.
Okay.
So,
I mean, we had the 1912 Lawrence textile strike, which was about working conditions.
Yeah, but feminists have always moved towards working. But this is the problem again. Working conditions for what? To capitalism? To work at capitalist plants?
I guess I'm not sure, like, what your overarching question is.
My overarching point is, why would you support if you don't support first wave feminism, because it fed millions upon millions of women into the pocket in the pocket of rich industrialists, which it did, and you agree it did, and the second wave did, and the third wave, and now even the fourth wave. None of these feminist waves are anti-capitalist.
No, I agree.
So how can you create and apply a law to people who are not represented? I just don't understand. Morally, how do you justify it?
There's nothing immoral about it.
There's nothing immoral about it? I mean, but that's
like,
kind of
I would say it's more immoral. Why is it moral for an 18-year-old to nullify the vote of a 41-year-old if the 18-year-old doesn't even know what they're voting for? How's that moral?
Well, because the 18-year-old is still subject to the laws of the state.
Yeah, but they don't even know what they're voting for.
Can an 18-year-old go to jail for 20 years?
A 16-year-old can. Should they be able to vote?
16-year-olds can't go to jail.
Yes, they can. 16-year-olds can go to jail for life. Should they be able to vote?
I mean, no, but why?
Well, why not? Why not? The laws apply to them, though.
Why would a 16-year-old be going?
Hang on,
I
don't understand. Because he murdered someone.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if you murder someone, that's a whole.
So I don't understand. Why can't he vote? The laws apply to him. Why can't he vote?
Yeah, but we all understand that.
No, we all understand it's not an argument. Why does a 16-year-old get to vote, even though all the laws apply to the 16-year-old? Why does he get to vote?
No, the laws apply. They start in juvenile detention, and then at 18, they get the right to go.
So laws apply to 16-year-olds?
But you're retried at 18.
So laws apply to 16-year-olds?
Some laws, of course,
Okay,
yes.
great. Why can't they vote then?
So babies should get the right to vote?
That's my question to you. That makes no sense. Exactly. So why do we limit it to 18?
Well, that's the age that we've defined as being a legal adult. That's the age that we as a country have universally agreed with our right to vote is.
Yeah, but what makes that a good idea? Just because you arbitrarily.
That's the age.
Yeah, but just because you arbitrarily say, for instance, that because you're 18 and you're an adult, like you can't buy cigarettes, you can't buy beer, you can't rent a car, but you're an adult. And now you can vote in the participation of democracy. At least raise it.
So you'd like to raise it?
At least raise it.
So you would like to universally raise the age to vote? I think that would be a better idea than like not allowing anyone.
No. What I said is at least do that. But the thing is, like, you're actually inconsistent here. Your whole argument is to say if laws affect people, they should have a right to vote. But we have an entire cast of people from the age 17 down who laws apply to and can't vote. And you just are like, you shrug that off like you didn't contradict yourself.
I'm pretty sure it has something to do with brain development. But we've all, like, you have to have an
not fully developed till what, 25 according to the studies?
But how do you have a society in which you don't have an age that someone becomes a leader?
I agree, but why couldn't you have a society in which you had stakeholder democracy? It's the same logic.
So if you're saying that we should not disenfranchise children, why would you then disenfranchise people who are legal adults?
When did I ever make the claim that I wanted children to be able to vote?
You just said that if everyone should have the right to vote.
I told you that your view is inconsistent. If it is the case propositionally, you say, Andrew, if laws apply to people, they should be able to vote. Except, everybody's 17 and under. That's inconsistent.
Because the laws do apply to children
It's inconsistent and a contradiction.
But laws do apply to children.
What about the laws that don't? What about the laws that don't? What about the laws where you're 17 years old and you can be tried as an adult?
Well, those are to protect like public freedom. I mean, but everyone loses civil liberties when they are a danger to the public.
Yeah, but
that's everyone.
Do you understand that you're making a contradiction when you say if laws should apply to all people should have a right to vote because they have laws which can be applied, they can be sent to prison, was your example. That would have to include everyone under the age of 18.
But people under the age of 18 don't go to adult prisons.
Yes, they do all the time.
Don't.
Yes, they do. That is, you want me to give you sources of 16, 17-year-olds tried as adults and sent to adult prisons?
Okay, but that's like an exception for exclusively horrific crimes. I mean, those are violent offenders.
Does the law apply to them or not?
To violent offenders, if you are a threat to public safety, yes.
Okay.
Everyone who
then
is a
if
threat
the
to public
law
safety,
applies to them and they can be sent to jail, then by your logic, they should be able to vote, which means you're in contradiction.
To those offenders, they are sent to juvenile detention centers until they turn 18, and then they are sent to an adult prison. They're
sent often to adult centers, even at 17, to adult prisons.
You can be sentenced as an adult, but you can't be sent to an adult prison at the age of 16.
This would depend widely on the state that you're in. It's not rigorously enforced across the board like you think. There's not like, I don't think there's federal laws which say this. But even if it were the case, I'll just grant it.
Well, then that's wrong.
I'll even grant the entire thing. It still wouldn't matter. Laws apply to them. They can still be sent to prison. They fit both of your criteria. Therefore, if you say they shouldn't be able to vote, your worldview's in contradiction.
Well, then I think that's wrong. I don't believe that children should be tried as adults until they have become adults.
So no laws apply to children?
No.
Well, then why shouldn't they be able to vote?
A threat to public safety always applies to everyone. Threats to public safety always apply to everyone.
Yeah, but why shouldn't they be able to vote if laws apply to them? That's your example.
Laws apply to children, but they are not in practice punished in the same way that they apply to adults. It's applied differently.
Can they be punished?
Of course they can
Then
be
why
punished.
can't they vote?
But you have to have some way to maintain societal control. Children aren't just allowed to do whatever the fuck they want because they're kids.
You need to be able to have some sort of societal control. So
Yes.
this would mean necessarily disenfranchising some people, wouldn't it?
It would mean necessarily disenfranchising children. Yes, they're not adults.
No, it would also mean disenfranchising prisoners. Do you want prisoners to vote on their right to own guns in a prison?
Not their right to own guns in a prison.
Well, then you're disenfranchising
but I do think
them.
that people who were in prison and then leave prison should then have
Felons?
the right to vote.
But they're disenfranchised currently under the law, right?
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. If you're a felon, you can't vote.
Yes. Oh, well, once they leave, yes, I do think that that's disenfranchisement, and I think Florida just rolled that back.
Yeah, but what's wrong with disenfranchising like murderers for life?
What's wrong with disenfranchisement? Well, they would be in jail for life. If
No.
they committed a
They're
murder.
out of jail. They're just felons, so they can't vote.
Well, I think that felons should be able to vote once they
Should
have
felons be able to own guns?
No, because it's.
Oh, well, I don't understand you. So you're again,
But do
you
you
are
understand-
so inconsistent with your
Pause, Mother.
disenfranchising.
Pookie, do you understand?
What?
Disenfranchisement should exist so long as someone is a threat to public safety. The reason why prisoners are not allowed to vote who are currently in prison is because they are a threat to public safety.
16-year-olds aren't a threat to public safety.
No, but they're children. You can't allow anyone to
So
vote
you
who's a
can
child.
arbitrarily disenfranchise people based on the fact that you think they're not capable of making good voting decisions, right?
No, a child is legally different than an adult.
Because they can't make
You can't have
good-
sex with a child.
Because
That
they
would be
can't
statutory rape.
Because they can't make good decisions.
No, because they're legally classified as a child. Do you not understand what
Because
a
they
child is?
can't make good decisions.
Because they're 2 and 3 and 4. They're not legally an
So
adult.
they can't make good decisions.
No, they can make good decisions, but generally speaking, you can't have children vote. There is a
I
legal age
agree
to
with
vote.
you. You can't.
Okay.
But why is it then that if I were to say that I only want 25-year-olds to vote, I would be disenfranchising?
But you didn't say you only want 25-year-olds to vote. You
do you
said
understand?
that you only want one marriage voting system per household.
Yeah,
You
well, that's
said
one way, yeah.
You want less of
But-
both adult men and
But
adult
do you understand how
women
my
to be
view is
able to vote.
consistent, but yours isn't? Because if you were to agree with me that you wanted, like, okay, Andrew, I would compromise at 25-year-olds voting, you've now disenfranchised everyone from the ages of 18 through 24.
If you were considered
all
a legal
overnight.
adult, you should be able to vote. That's my state. If you are considered a legal adult, if you are tried as an adult, if you are allowed to buy a house,
Yeah.
have a child.
But that leads to the problem is that leads to political tribalism. So, like, for instance, why is it a healthy society to have men and women who are married voting against each other? That's a terrible idea.
Because they're both like, but if a man commits a murder, does his wife go to jail for that crime?
No.
No, because they're not the same fucking person.
What does that have to do with anything?
If they're different people and they're both tried differently and they both have separate lives
Yeah.
and separate bank accounts,
Yeah.
and separate bodily and physical autonomy, then they should each get a stake in this government. No.
Well, that literally has nothing to do with what I just asked.
They're not the same
so
person,
real quick,
so why should they be represented?
You remember
in the
how
same
I said
thing?
yes and no to your question? Can you do that for me? Remember how I was like, yes, and just answered it? Can you actually do that for me, too?
I don't remember that at all.
You literally just asked me that question. You said, if a husband's carted off to prison, does her wife go to prison? I said no.
Okay.
Can you do that for me, too, and then give your explanation? Because otherwise, I don't know your actual
I said
position.
Thing and then gave the explanation.
So now I'd like to know,
You should listen
do you
to
think it's a good idea for wives and husbands to be able to vote against each other's interests?
They should both have a vote, yes.
Well, but they can't vote against each other's interests, right?
That is circumstantial. They may not, they might.
Yeah, they may not, they might. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But why is it good that option's even there? Seems like a terrible idea.
Because in a representative democracy, everyone should be represented with a vote.
Yeah, I get that's a descriptive truth, but you're not telling me why that should be the case. If I were to give you the counterclaim here, I would say if you had like one household voting or something like this, it would be much more uniform and wouldn't divide families against each other. And that's exactly what the vote has done.
But they're both subject to the same legislative, like they can both be legislated independent of each other, right?
No, well, not really. One cannot, at that point, make a decision that doesn't affect the other one, usually.
Yes, they can.
Not really. What?
I mean, Roe v. Wade. That only affects a woman's body, right? No?
You think that if a man is married to a woman and she goes and aborts his baby, that doesn't affect him?
Of course it does, but it affects him differently than his body.
But that's my whole point is that everything they do in this household is going to affect each other.
Sure.
So you wouldn't want to promote systems
But they
which
still are
divide
individuals.
husbands against wives.
But they're individuals, no.
What does
Are
that
they
do
the
with
same
anything?
Are they the same person or not?
This is not what's in dispute.
Are they the same person or not?
Okay, no.
Then why should they not each have an individual liberty? What if they get a
Because
divorce?
you don't want to set up systems that divide them against each other. That's
well,
a bad
then don't
idea.
marry someone who doesn't want to vote for you, with you. But that's...
No, do you understand that like people's preferences change over time, and there could be various reasons in which, if you have a tribal type of mentality, like take abortion for instance. Abortion's a great one. Do you think that it's possible that women, for instance, could hold it against their husband and say things like, "Do this, or I'll abort your child"? They could actually do that, right?
Yeah, hypothetically, sure.
Yeah, and have done that.
that would be immoral.
And have done that.
That would be immoral
Yeah,
and wrong.
but you wouldn't say they couldn't go get the abortion, would you?
But would you say a man can't
But hang on. Answer the question first.
What?
You wouldn't say that they shouldn't be allowed to do that, though, would you?
Well, if it would be disenfranchising millions of other women who aren't in that situation
That's
and need an abortion, then
yes or no, please. You wouldn't say that you would not actually say that they should not be allowed to get the abortion, right?
no, I think everyone should have access to
Okay,
free
so
will.
even if it were the case that a woman, right, was holding the man basically emotionally hostage with her pregnancy and said, "Do what I say or I'll get an abortion," right? You would not make any claim that she could or could not get that abortion, would you?
I would make a claim that what she's doing is immoral, but I wouldn't make a claim that
And
because
should
one
anything
person is
happen to a
immoral-
woman who does that?
Yeah,
What?
I mean that's blackmailing. I think
It's
that's a
not
crime.
blackmail.
I think on a level it's emotional blackmail. I
Yeah.
think you should be able
So
to sue someone
what
for
should happen?
emotional
Should they go
blackmail.
to jail?
I mean, maybe pay damages or a fine.
A fine?
Yeah.
How much should the fine be?
I don't know.
$200?
How
Dude.
much is an abortion?
They'd be the same as an abortion.
Can I ask you a question?
So just
Can
to
I
get
ask
this
you a
right, well, I
question?
want to finish this real quick.
No, can
and
I
then we
ask
can
you a
move
question?
back. Well, no, you can't until I finish the inquiry.
Okay,
but then
well,
you
I'm not
can,
going to answer your question.
But then,
until I
but you
ask
can
mine.
inquire back. I just want to finish this inquiry,
Go
the
for
line
it.
of inquiry. That's all. So just to make sure I got this right, you have now said that the tribal voting does indeed pit husband against wife, has a potential to do so. Right. And I've even conceded to specific examples of where it would be in a woman's interest to vote against her husband, to have a right to do something which could be used against him later. And then said, well, the punishment should be like, oh, maybe she pays a fine if something like that happens. And how are you going to convince people that that's a better system than one household voting? That's a terrible system. I said in the Ukraine.
Okay.
The Ukraine, men can be drafted up to 65.
Well, I disagree with the draft.
Okay, got it. That's great. You disagree with it. Mm-hmm. But the only people right now who can be drafted are who?
Men.
And the reasons that we just went over previously determines that the reason that we want to draft men is for these exact reasons. Because they're stronger, they're better in combat, these are the positions we would need them in, and because these are the positions we need them in, women are excluded from those roles.
Well, again, going from special infantry to just military bodies, obviously more is just going to be better.
Why? More takes way more resources. More is not better.
Yeah, but numbers is also another strategy that wins war. If you have more soldiers than the other team.
Yeah, sure, that can be helpful, but it's more helpful to have a very well-trained, very combat-ready military.
If you're drafting, they're not going to be well-trained.
Yeah, we've won wars with draftees. They were plenty well-trained. So the thing is like,
but
that's incorrect.
Being trained and being well-trained are two different things.
I guess you had specialists too, but the point is they were very much trained and they very much kicked the shit out of half the world. So that was with draftees.
Okay.
So the thing is we've already established that men are far better in these roles than women. Men ought to be in these roles and not women. This is by your own logic. So what privileges should men get considering they can be drafted into these roles and women cannot be?
I mean, if we're going on a society based on like this is always going to be the outcome and this is a necessity, I don't think necessarily there would. I'm not against sending men to go to war against their will.
You are against it, or not?
I'm against sending men to go to war against their will. So
I thought you said not.
Oh, maybe I misspoke. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But so just to clarify for the audience, you mean you are against it? Okay.
Yes.
Just one.
I would want them to elect to go.
And so what happens if nobody goes, like they didn't want to in the Ukraine? Does Russia take the Ukraine over? Does Russia take over Ukraine?
I mean, I think it would again depend on other resources available. If there are other militaries, if there are other...
so other militaries aren't going to step in.
Then yeah, that would happen.
So
but I mean, again, forcing men to go, I mean, you can't force them to fight.
Yes, you can force men to fight.
How?
The same way they did under communism. They say you run at that machine gun nest, and if you turn around, we will kill you. And that's exactly what they did.
Oh, I mean, then...
What they did was
they
lined up thousands of Soviet soldiers, and they handed them a rifle. They said, if you die, the guy behind you pick up the rifle, reload, and continue to go.
Sure.
And if they turned around and came back, if they ran away, men with machine guns were waiting for them and mowed them all down.
Okay.
So yeah, you could definitely force men to fight. I mean, that's been done time and time again. If you ran away in World War II, you were a traitor and you were shot. That's forcing you to fight. If you run away from combat, you get shot.
Right. I'm saying, obviously, if they don't fight, they die. Like, that's clear. Mm-hmm. But, like, if they think they're going to die already...
I'm confused.
You know, going to war, they're like, I'm pretty much going to die already, so I'm just going to try and escape so I can avoid that. And if they kill me, then the outcome's the same.
Well, that's not what happens.
I guess my issue...
You're compelled and pressed into service. Like, you can't do anything. If you don't sign up for the draft as a man in the United States, you're not supposed to be able to vote.
I know.
So then how come if women don't sign up for the draft, they get to vote? That's bullshit.
Well, again, I'm against the draft.
Yeah, I got it. So then just nobody defends the nation.
Well, I think obviously within America, we have a huge society that's very big on militarism, which is why no one has been drafted.
Nobody's been drafted because we haven't fought a professional war where we had hundreds of thousands of body bags being sent home. That's why nobody's been drafted.
Well, sure, but also I would say people are joining more than they were back then.
No, I think that the rates per population, remember at the time, I think there was only 150 million people. It was like half the people at the time than there is now. Mm-hmm. So no, I think proportionally plenty of people were joining the military. I don't know if it's at the same rates because you had different benefits for it, but plenty of people were joining the military.
Okay.
The thing is, though, is that we just haven't had a war where hundreds of thousands of people die. You have to replace your soldiers, right?
Sure.
Do you think people are going to be more or less likely to join if people are dying in mass?
They'll be less likely to join.
Yeah, they'd be less likely. So then what do? You compel service. Like, what else can you do other than compel service?
I mean, not go to war.
Yeah, but like you can't. Why do you think you can decide those things? Like you can't make the decision.
Because like I think there is motivation, obviously, between countries who are engaging in war and the reasons behind those.
Yeah, but you can't
I think
solve those
just,
reasons.
Like I'm not disagreeing with you that under like the idea of patriarchy that there is going to be some dependence on men because obviously I would think that still
under the idea of matriarchy. too.
No, I don't think that male violence would be pervasive. I mean, when do you think patriarchy?
How can?
One second. When do you
okay,
think
go ahead.
patriarchy originated?
I think it's always been the case.
Yeah, I would say patriarchy originated, depending again on what aspect, what country we're looking at or what region, would be between like 8,000 BC and 5,000 BC.
And when do you think? What do you think our oldest written record is?
I believe it's Egyptian scribes, which I think
the
is
Epic of Gilgamesh?
5,000. Yeah, isn't that when?
The Sumerian?
Yes, and isn't that when they worship female gods?
No.
Yeah.
Anu was a male god.
No, it was a female god.
No, Anu was a male god. Promise.
No. She was the good mother.
That's not a she. It's Anu. I'm pretty confident Anu was a male god.
Inanna?
Yeah, like Anunnaki. It comes from the male god Anu.
Like the exaltation of an Anu?
No, it's just Anu. I think Anu.
Yeah, the
It
exaltation.
means God. It just means God.
Well, the exaltation of an Anu is thought to be the first poem, and that's
What about El?
a female god.
El.
What do you mean El?
El is another god. In fact, if
Okay,
you're
what
talking,
about-
in fact, I actually have a list here of Egyptian gods. Or,
Well-
I'm sorry, pre-3,500 year gods. Let me give you the list real quick.
Sure.
Just because I brought it with me. Hang on real quick, Brian, before you get into the super chats.
Oh no! While he's looking that up, you brought up the term patriarchy. Can you just define the term for the audience?
Yeah, male supremacy, domination, and dependency.
Okay, male supremacy, domination, and what was the last one? Sorry.
Dependency.
Yeah, I was right.
Okay.
Anu, Mesopotamia, Sumeria, 5,000 BC, king of the gods. Enlil, Mesopotamia, Sumerian. Enki, Mesopotamia. Ptah, pre-dynastic Egyptian, 6,000 BC. Pre-Shupati, El, I said El, pre-Canaan, pre-Levantine, 3,900 BC. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on of male gods.
All right, I'm not saying there are male gods, but wasn't that all before?
It's all before your time frame of 3,500 years ago.
Okay, so I'm just curious on the view. What would be a virtue that I guess if women lost that virtue, it would be worse for society
Chastity.
than men? Explain.
And we can, I mean, we can dive right into it. So chastity would be an easy one.
Okay.
So men, for instance, they can impregnate basically like as many women as they can make a deal for, right? As many as if there was 100 women who were lined up here today and you could have sex 100 times, you could impregnate 100 women.
Sure, we're assuming they're consenting to the sex?
Yeah, you could actually do that, right? But you agree that women can't. They can only get pregnant by one man at a time.
Yeah, sure, there is a difference
So then
there.
if that's the case, then when we're talking about the social cohesion, right, women are basically going to be the gatekeepers of whose DNA passes on and whose DNA doesn't pass on. You agree with that?
How are they the gatekeepers, though?
Well, because you can have as many children as you want.
Sure.
They can't.
Yes.
Yes, they can't. So they get to basically be the selection for reproduction, not you.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying? They get to be they get to be kind of the gatekeepers for who gets to reproduce and who doesn't get to reproduce. Whereas you, right, you can just reproduce with like everything that you saw, as many partners as you could arrange for who would agree. Mm-hmm. You could actually impregnate all of them, right?
Sure, but would then you
So
would,
for
you would
women,
probably also agree they shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
right?
So if women aren't chaste, right? If they're not chaste and they have sex with like 50 men, right? At least this used to be the case, especially, then paternity comes into question. Other things come into question, right? Not really the case with men. If you
How
had
not?
sex with 100 women,
Yeah.
right? And no other men had sex with them, right? Or 100 men had sex with this woman, and what are you doing, dude?
Bring me water.
Oh, fuck. This guy's like fucking shifting
what is
behind me.
that?
I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? All right, so where were we at?
But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so conditional, we're talking about the gatekeeping of female pregnancy.
Okay, I just don't see how it's different in terms of like men would have questionable about paternity if they have
How?
sex.
How
with
would they
100
have questions about
with 100 women?
paternity?
Wait, are you assuming that only one man is having sex with these 100 women, or all of men are having sex with 100 women?
Yeah. So if it is the case that a woman has sex with 20 different men, right? It is the case that paternity is going to be in question, right?
Sure.
That is indeed the case.
Paternity is going to be in question. Yeah, paternity is going to be in question.
Yeah. So if we go back, the reason I'm tying this in with virtues, the reason I'm kind of moving from the back end to the front end, is to explain this concept to you. I wish I had home math skills so I could draw this out. Let us assume for a moment that you wanted to be assured that your child was yours, and you didn't have paternity tests.
Okay.
How could you do that?
In the old, I guess, a long time ago?
Well, it's not that long ago. Paternity tests are modern.
Fine. And you want to be sure of it?
Yeah.
I guess then only you would be having sex with your wife or something like that. Or you would want to have sex with a woman who wasn't actively having sex with other men at the same time. And I think that's perfect. I think that's a perfectly normal boundary
So wait,
to have.
hang on. What is the last thing you just said? You would want to make sure what?
That you and your wife were the only people having sex with each other.
Right.
I think there's nothing wrong with monogamy.
What would be a good tell for that?
What do you mean?
That she wasn't having sex with a lot of men before you, right?
Wait. No, I don't necessarily think that's the case.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I think people can engage in a lot of sexual activity because they're enjoying that, and they enter a monogamous relationship and decide that that's what's best for them, and that's what they want.
Well,
I don't think that just because she chooses to have a lot of sex outside of a relationship means that she should automatically be distrusted within a monogamous relationship.
So let's just make sure we got this right.
Is it same for men, though?
We're going to set this. No, it's not.
Well,
but I'll
wait,
get into that
okay.
next.
If
But
a
hang
man,
on.
has
Let's
sex with a bunch of
finish.
people, if a man has sex with a bunch of people,
Bro,
and he gets into a
I'm
relationship,
going to explain
should
it.
he be distrusted?
I'm going to explain it.
Okay.
But let's move into this because we're talking about the social destruction aspect. So let's start with this. You think that it is the case that if a woman has a promiscuous past, right, that should essentially not in any way show, men should show no distrust towards that woman for the purposes of having a family with her.
Hold on. Was she in relationships with people, and was she lying to them, and was she cheating on them?
She was just having a lot of promiscuous sex with many, many men.
Then that's fine. Well, I guess we're assuming also no STDs, no stuff like
Sure,
that.
we just bake it in.
Okay, fine. Then yeah, no, I don't.
There shouldn't be any trust distinction at all.
No, I mean you have conversations with this person. Be like, yeah, no, I had that past. I enjoyed that part of my life, but I want to settle down now.
And would you say that those women would probably be on par with trust of like virgin women when it came to that? Right. It follows, right?
Sure.
Except it doesn't because you didn't think about it, and here's why.
Okay.
There's if I were to ask you about comparisons, right? Comparatively, if a woman only has sex with one partner, can she compare any other partners to that man she's had sex with?
No, I guess not.
So she wouldn't be knowing what she was missing out on or not missing out on, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So then if that's the case, if a virgin got married, right, she would have no other men to make comparisons against for any potentiality she might be missing out on, correct?
Hold on. Yes, but then you're claiming that you should marry virgin women because there might not be another guy, or they're not going to have a reference for another guy who's better at having sex than you are,
or better at whatever the traits are. So the more that human beings experience partners, how's that weird? It just blows your position.
No, it doesn't blow my position.
You said there's no distinct thing that we could ever point to, right? And this is because when I asked you, hey, do you think that it's the case that if you have a virgin woman, right, versus a very promiscuous woman, they're equally as trustworthy? You said yes. However, you instantly blow your own position out the second you say that there is a comparative analysis which people are going to be making. That would erode the trust immediately.
Wait a second. So just so I can understand your position, I want to just restate what you're saying back to you. Are you saying that because a woman who had more sex before marriage has more experience with what men she likes and what men she doesn't like, that therefore within the marriage, if she's unhappy with the state of the current marriage, she has things to compare it to, and thus she might be more likely to leave? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not just that, right? But it could be that if she had never experienced, and in fact, this is likely because women polled say this, if she had never experienced these other men and had no comparison, she would actually be much happier in the current relationship that she was in.
Well, okay, so ignorance is bliss is what you're arguing?
It's not ignorance.
Well,
right?
it is. She doesn't know about the other men.
It's a comparative. Well, then by your standards, should she just a bunch of men so that she knows?
No, not necessarily. Wait.
Which thing is more preferable for society then?
Wait, but you're making a false dichotomy. Wait, you're making a false dichotomy.
I can't wait.
You are. You're saying that there's on one side that women do not have sex or before marriage whatsoever at all, and the other one is women just people all the time,
Yeah.
no matter what.
No, just promiscuity. I'm just asking. It would logically follow that if women have 2 men, she now has a comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, so then
I think it's a
we
good
would
thing.
just say that every single time there's an additional. Well, okay, then if you think
Then
wait,
have
you
to
think
be
it's
better.
a good thing,
Then you have to be better.
then wait
actually.
a second. Then if
you
you
have
think
to be
that's
better than
bro,
the other guys.
no, let's back up. Then you think it's a good thing. You just said I think that's a good thing. So that means if that's a good thing, why shouldn't they a lot of men so that they have the largest comparison sample size possible?
I think it depends on the individual woman and what she wants. Some people don't want to have that much sex. Some people just don't.
That doesn't
and that's
answer
fine.
my question.
Wait.
If you think it's good that she had sex with one more person, right? Because now she has a comparative sample size, why shouldn't she have sex with hundreds of different
Wait a
people
second.
to make sure she has the best comparative
you're
sample
reducing this
size?
to absurdity.
Oh,
There's
bro,
always-
I'm sorry.
let me
I'm
explain.
sorry
let me
that it's
explain.
upsetting to you, but
it's not upsetting. Hold on. Do you
Yeah.
think that eating broccoli is good? Mm-hmm. Do you think that we should just eat as much broccoli as possible all the time?
But do I?
Did you think we
No.
just eat an insane amount?
No.
So there can be a good thing, and that thing can be good up to a threshold.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that if I were to say, right, eating lots of broccoli is good, so I have a comparison against other vegetables or something like this, right? And you rightly asked me then, well, shouldn't we eat like a ton of broccoli then so we have the highest comparison? We can also make that and say, well, but we cut it off at this before it gets to the point of like you're going to
Broccoli
throw up
poisoning
or
or-
something
yeah.
like this,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
That's fair,
Yes.
but that would still equal a lot more men, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So then you think honestly that women probably ought to f- a lot of men.
Not ought. No. Because I also think it's
Then wouldn't they be missing
Hold on.
out, bro?
No, I don't think they're missing out.
How do they really know
Hold
what their
on.
preferences
Wait a
are,
second,
though, bro?
Because there's hold on. Because there are different women who want different things. You're ascribing a monolith. Some women might want to be virgins until marriage because they value sex in a
Yeah,
significant
but
way
how
that
do they
other
really
women
know
don't.
unless they're having sex with multiple men?
You don't necessarily have to have sex with multiple men if you don't want that comparison.
Okay.
You don't have to, just because a comparison might be helpful in certain
Yeah.
instances, doesn't mean that the negatives for that individual person might outweigh the positive benefits that they're having.
Perfect. So then is it the case then, right, that if we're just looking at the cost-benefit analysis of comparison for outcome, if we are to have the best outcomes with women who've only had one sexual partner, because there's no comparative
What do you mean
analysis.
best outcomes? Can you just...
Yeah, this means they stay in their marriages longer and report happiness levels that are higher, which all virgins do almost
Well,
universally.
Come on, well, okay.
Yeah,
should make-
almost.
fine,
What did I say?
Overwhelming majority?
Overwhelming
Fine, okay.
majority do.
Okay.
Same thing. And the reason I say universal is because it doesn't matter the nation. It doesn't matter the nation, at least in the Western nation. Doesn't matter the nation when it comes to dissatisfaction. Now, you can look at some nations, perhaps in the Middle East, where they measure dissatisfaction, but you can't tell if it's because they're virgins or because they live in the Middle East, right? Like, you can't tell. But in Western nations, you can tell. And here's how we know. We can do an analysis from the religious, right? The more religious they are, the less promiscuous they often are, and the more often they get married virgins, right? And here's what ends up happening. The non-religious, the secular women get married virgins, and the religious women to get married virgins both report a much higher sexual satisfaction rate, much higher attraction rate, right? And they have much less in the way of the marriage splitting up because they make no comparative analysis.
I think making a weird comparative analysis is kind of strange because what it feels like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I don't want my wife to have had sex with other men because I don't want her to compare the sex we're having to other men, which might make me feel insecure and make me feel that my sex
Let me
is
ask
not
you,
as
is
good.
that, do you honestly believe that that's a less tenable position than yours, which is I want my wife to have had sex
no.
with multiple
No.
men to compare other men to me?
If hold on, it is. Oh no.
I'm
Wait,
just
because,
saying.
No, Andrew.
That is what
Andrew,
you're saying,
no,
bro.
it's not.
Well, then
Because you're
why would you be
assuming-
against it?
Wait, I'm not, because women aren't a monolith, Andrew, and women don't all want the same thing.
So what? That's not what we're talking about.
Wait,
did I say
because-
women were a monolith or they all want the same thing?
Because
or
you're
did I
now-
say that
hold
if
on,
you make
they
a comparative analysis for outcome, that the outcomes tend to be a lot better for the virgin women because they don't make the comparative analysis?
I think it is strange to say people ought to have less experience so they
think
don't
it's-
know what they're missing out on.
I think
so
it's
they don't
really
know what they're
strange.
missing out on.
So then you're right. They don't know what so then you want your woman to have previously been a bunch. So you wouldn't want her to be with you only because she didn't know what she was missing out on.
Yeah.
Right?
So
okay.
Wait a second,
All right,
Andrew. Wait a second. Andrew. Let me.
I would say that like the idea of grape became into existence like with agriculture.
What? What do you? So you think that men weren't raping before then?
No, I don't.
Oh, and
because I don't
what's
think
your
they,
evidence for that?
I don't think they understood men's role when it came to how women became pregnant and how children were created.
What did that have to do with them just being horny?
I don't think men grape because they're horny.
Why not? What do you mean? So wait a second.
Because
Let me get this
rape
right.
is an act of humiliation. And
So primitive man, right? You agree with me that Homo sapiens have been around for about 100,000 years?
I think it's 300,000.
At least 100,000.
Yeah.
Okay, but we didn't come in. So we actually operated the same way we are right now. We have the same brains, same physicality, basically same everything. Differences in height, differences in smaller things like that.
Sure.
But we have the same capacity. So do you saying within that 100,000 years, this, let's just say, for the sake of argument, but you know what? We'll do the 300,000. Within this 300,000 years, only 10,000 years ago, men figured out the technology of grape.
Yeah, I don't think, like, if you don't know that sex creates children, then your whole theory is that men are graping so that children can come into existence.
That's not my theory. That's your theory.
Hold on.
I think men.
That's not my theory.
Hide it in the sources. Good. You guys continue that.
Yeah, I think that men grape because they're horny too.
I disagree.
One sec, guys.
Oh, you disagree.
Hold on. Can you hide it here too?
Yeah, so let's test that and see if you actually do disagree. Does every single time you have sex with a woman require consent?
Well, I would say sex implicitly, by definition, would be consensual. If it's not, then it's grape.
So then every instance of sex would require consent?
Correct.
Okay. So if a husband wakes up in the morning and he has a boner and he leans over and starts banging his wife while she's asleep, is he graping her?
Yes.
He is. Why is he doing that? Because he's horny?
I think because he assumes he has consent.
Yeah, so he's horny. So therefore, if it is the case that he's still graping her, even if he assumes he has consent and does not, that he's graping her because he's horny, right?
No, I don't think that he thinks he's graping her.
But that has nothing to do with the fact of the matter. You said that men
the
do not grape.
the motivation behind grape is not that they're horny.
That's definitely his motivation behind that grape.
No, because he doesn't think he's graping her.
Why would it matter whether he thinks he's
Because
doing
that
that or not?
determines the motivation, right?
You're saying that men have to think that they're doing the act in order for them to be
No.
motivated to do the act?
No, not at all. I'm not saying that men don't commit grape unknowingly.
Okay, so this guy is graping his wife, which, by the way, means that I've graped my wife I don't know how many times.
That's
right?
a weird thing to admit.
No, I'm fine with it. Like, if
You're
you,
fine saying that you've graped your wife?
Yeah, if you think that me rolling over in the morning and she's asleep and waking her up with sex is grape,
Well,
then
I
I'm fine
mean,
with it.
she's unconscious.
She's asleep for sure.
That's unconscious, right?
Sure. Yeah.
If she had too much to drink and passed out.
Yeah, we've done
which-
that too when we're both drunk. Yeah.
Well, I mean, where she passed out.
Yeah. She's also graped me by this metric too. She's woken me up with sex. I
Well,
didn't consent.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying here. Are you saying that you've graped your wife while she's been passed out?
I'm saying while my wife has been sleeping, I've woken her up with sex
Mm-hmm.
many times, and vice versa. So did we grape each other?
By definition, yeah.
Yeah. So we're both. She grapes me sometimes. I grape her sometimes.
I think
A little grape.
forced penetration is still grape.
A little grape here, a little grape there. She grapes a little. I grape a little.
That's weird.
We all do a little bit of graping.
Why?
Totally not weird, by the
mean,
way. I'm just going to tell you,
would
this
you
is the
continue?
norm. What's that?
Would you continue if she didn't wake up?
I don't know. Half the time I'm drunk, right?
So you don't know if you would continue.
No, I don't think I would continue if she didn't wake up.
Why?
I don't know. It's less fun.
It's right. So obviously you want your partner to be conscious, enthusiastic.
Yeah, but she wasn't conscious when we started.
I understand that,
Yeah,
but
so a little grape there.
So
little
if
grape
you
here.
then why not just wake her up?
Why do I need? I am waking her up
Well,
with
I mean,
my penis.
Why not
I'm
just
waking
wake
her up
before
with my
penetration?
penis.
This
Yes.
is crazy.
Why is that crazy? Do you know how common it is that men and women wake each other up? Like a man will be woke up by his
I don't care
girlfriend.
how common it is.
Yeah. So
What does that have to do with anything?
What makes it crazy?
Because they're unconscious.
So? Do you know what implied consent is?
I do know what implied consent is.
There's an
but
implied consent when you get married. It's implied that you're consenting to sex.
I don't think it's necessarily
Then do you have to
implied.
bite the bullet that my wife has raped me any number of times?
I've told you. I already agree with
and
you.
you think that that's rational?
That it's rational
Yeah.
to say what?
Do you think that I'm emotionally scarred because my wife rapes me or
Oh,
grapes me?
no.
But is she emotionally scarred by me graping her?
I mean, I don't know. Probably not.
So then rape can just be a neutral act where it doesn't harm anybody?
I mean, I definitely do think it can harm in certain capacities,
Sure,
even if
but-
you're not consciously aware of it.
Yeah, but it's not harming anybody,
I mean,
right? So grape,
so
hang on, grape
what-
can be morally neutral. I just want to make sure we're clear.
No.
What would make it morally bad? Demonstrate the harm. Who's being harmed?
Well, I think in some capacity, it would be the same harm that would come of someone engaging with someone who is like dead.
What?
I think the psychological, I think psychological aspect of wanting to
Demonstrate it. Demonstrate that there's harm.
One second.
Okay.
I think the psychological aspect of wanting to engage in intercourse with someone who is unconscious is highly harmful.
Demonstrate it.
Demonstrate what?
How? So if my wife,
So
you
that
just
would
got done
be-
saying, if
that-
my
that-
wife wakes me
it's
up,
classified as what is like paraphilic.
help
which
me
is-
out with this. I'm totally asleep, okay? Completely asleep, and I wake up, and my wife is giving me a blowjob. I wake up to that, okay? What's the harm? How have I been harmed? Tell me how this possibly is harmful to me.
I'm not saying it could be harmful to you.
So then grape is morally neutral sometimes.
No, I don't think it's morally neutral. Like I don't think like
Then what's the
necessarily
immoral part
harm.
here?
I don't think harm necessarily has to come to the victim in order for it to be.
Then what would make this morally bad? What makes it morally
I told you
bad?
the psychology of wanting to engage in intercourse with someone who is unconscious.
Okay,
Why is
again,
it? Why is
you
it?
haven't explained how that's harmful
would
or
you
how that's bad.
One second. Would you engage with your wife if she were dead?
No, of course not.
Why?
Because her soul has left her body. She's not a person anymore.
Her soul has left her body.
Mm-hmm. She's not a human being anymore. It would be like fucking dirt.
Can you give
right?
me like the secular position?
Why do I need to give you any other position?
How
than
is
that?
it? I think it's.
You need to give me from your position instead of obfuscating what actually makes
I'm
it
trying
immoral.
to give it an analogy.
Yeah, well, can you just tell me this? What makes it immoral for my wife to wake me up with a blowjob? What makes that immoral? By the way, have you ever woken your ex-husband? Do you ever wake him up like that?
No,
Never. Never happened once?
not that I no.
No? All right. But you do realize this is very common, right?
Sure, yes.
And so just people are just commonly graping each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of instances where grape happens where people don't think they are graping someone.
So
That's a part of like miscommunication theory.
okay, great. I just want to make sure I get the correct or the answer to this question correct. What is the actual harm? And demonstrate it for me logically, please. Or the
Can you-
immorality. Why is it immoral for my wife to do that to me?
Well, I mean, obviously, if we're talking about consent, I think the basis for that is the Fry's model, which is freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. And so obviously it doesn't meet certain aspects of those criteria.
Why is that immoral?
I
though?
mean,
I
we're-
like it. I like it when she does that. What is immoral about her doing that? I want her to do that. I'm not conscious at the time. That's true. But I'm very fucking enthusiastic that I want to wake up that way. Very enthusiastic about it.
Again, I think pleasuring someone who is unconscious is psychologically concerning.
I'm sorry about your mind state of concern. That's very Karen-ish of you, but can you tell me why it's immoral?
It's sort of a Karen-ish.
It's very your concern's very Karen-ish, but why is it immoral?
I would place it under like a paraphilic sexual behavior.
So all of the men out there whose wives have woken them up with sex, all of those women
Paraphilic.
Paraphilic.
I think the act itself.
They want to have sex with dead. They want to have sex with dead people.
I mean, paraphilic is just defined as like atypical sexual preferences, and to like.
Yeah, but you were saying
want
it was
to have
necrophilic.
sex with someone who's.
You were saying it was necrophilic.
Well,
earlier.
necrophilia falls under paraphilic.
Okay,
so does like pedophiles.
So there's necrophilia. So you think that there's tons and tons of women out there who are
there are
necrophiles?
obviously like pedophiles and like necrophilia are two different things.
Do you agree
Paraphilic
with
just
me
means
that-
atypical sexual desires.
Do you agree
Like
with me?
I would classify kink under that.
Do you agree with me that tons and tons and tons of women likely wake their man up with some sort of sexual
I already
favor?
did.
Yeah. So
Like
then,
asked and answered.
So then is that they're kind of necrophiles?
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, I don't understand what you're saying. It can't be. By the way, that doesn't make any sense. It can't be uncommon if it's common.
Well, it's if we're talking about like the experience of like atypical sexual behaviors, then yes, engaging with someone who is unconscious
Is common.
is an atypical.
It's not atypical if you're saying it's common. That would be typical.
I mean, in terms of like a common occurrence, sure, but in terms of like a common outcome of intercourse, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry.
I think it's very typical.
You commonly start intercourse unconscious.
That's not what I said. I said it's very typical to do it, though. So, like, I don't typically eat gourmet caviar, but you would agree with me that it is typical that people do eat gourmet. It's like a typical behavior. You wouldn't say it's atypical to eat gourmet caviar, would you?
Again, just because something is common doesn't mean it's typical.
What does typical mean?
So I think like we could talk about frequency.
Well, let's
of
just make sure we get
things.
this right. What does typical
I'm
mean?
trying to.
I just want to make sure I know what typical means.
Sure, one second. I think we can talk about things happening in common frequency.
Okay.
But in terms of how often things happen outside of that frequency is going to make it like, so 1% of 4 million is going to be a large number. So we could say it's common. But in terms of looking at it in a percentage, it's only 1%, so it's atypical.
Okay, so I don't understand how, when we're talking about behavior,
I would say it's atypical.
What is it? Okay, then what threshold does it need to meet to become atypical or for behavior, like percentage-wise?
I don't know.
So then how do you even know what's atypical?
I would just say the classification. Do you think most people, when they have sex, are doing so unconscious? So like with an unconscious
That's not
person?
what I said. No.
So that's my threshold.
Okay, well then, do you think that most people have sex missionary style or doggy style most
I
of the
have no
time?
idea.
What if you had to guess? Because would that make doggy style atypical?
Well, no, because again, we're talking about percentages.
Right. So then I would need to know what is the percentage before it becomes atypical.
I
Don't know.
don't know.
Yeah. So then you can't really make the claim it's atypical.
Well, then how can we make the claim that anything is atypical?
Good question. I didn't make the claim it's atypical.
So
I
you
said
don't
it's
you don't think
typical.
like paraphilic sex desires exist?
Yeah, I think that we can definitely make claims to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, but when I guess the delineation here we're talking about is just typical versus not typical. I think that it's if you're talking about what is common,
Yeah.
I think it's super common that this happens all the time.
In terms of volume or in terms of percentage?
Both. Yeah, I think it's very common.
So you think this
So I
is
would
like
say
50% of
I
sexual
would
interactions?
no, but I think that 50% of people have had this sexual interaction.
But I'm asking in terms of if we were to classify all sexual interactions, would this be a common where people start off intercourse with one partner unconscious?
No.
Okay,
No,
so-
it's
so
not.
that's-
It's not going
that's
to
what
be
I'm
something.
saying.
It's not going to be. But that doesn't make it not common. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we're quibbling now. Like we're saying the same thing,
I hope we are.
but maybe we can semantically. Maybe we can
just,
semantically get here.
I mean, why would? Okay, yeah, you already answered.
Because I'm horny. That's why I do it,
Well,
and I enjoy it. I enjoy raping her. I enjoy it.
having sex with someone unconscious.
My wife, yeah, I like it waking her up that way. Yeah.
But you said if she didn't wake up, you would stop.
I know she does sometimes. She's like,
I don't.
she's like, ah. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. And she's like, okay. I know. Yeah. She's like she can't believe this is happening. I've really shocked her. And then she just she's okay with it. Is that wild? Am I graping her?
I think without having some form of like express consent, then yeah.
Yeah. Damn, I do this all the time. Like constantly.
Constantly?
I really do. Yeah, it happens all the time.
Constantly is crazy.
Yeah. Like anytime I wake up with a boner, if she's not awake, she's definitely getting woke up that way.
Well, why? I'm curious. Why don't you just wake her up?
I am waking her up with my penis.
I'm asking before. I'm asking what is the purpose of waking her up with your penis rather than just like jolting her?
Because I think it's hilarious and it feels great.
You get the same outcome whether you wake her up. If you wake her up,
It's like a big surprise for her, Surprise!
a surprise if it's wanted.
I just assume it's wanted.
So you just assume consent.
From my wife? Yes, absolutely. And by the way, I'm just going to tell you, right? I completely stand behind this. This is not trolling.
I don't think you are trolling. I would never suggest that
100%
you are
stand
trolling.
behind this, and I think it's not a big deal at all.
Okay.
Like, not even a little bit. And I actually haven't heard you demonstrate, because you said it's not harmful to her and it's not harmful to you. I actually haven't heard you demonstrate why this is even bad. You just kind of just think so.
I mean, sure, I definitely think it's really icky that someone wants to have sex with someone who's unconscious.
Is it immoral?
Like, I think would you have sex with her if she were in a coma?
No.
So what, what is the delineation here?
Well, I just would get the ick. Ugh.
I'm just, no.
I'd be like, eh.
No, really. Like from your,
What if she has asthma?
She does have asthma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just checking. Sorry.
what does that,
Sorry,
do,
sorry.
what does that have to do with
That
it?
could like stun her into like a, like she
Sorry.
can't breathe. Yeah, I don't know.
Rachel has asthma right now, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never mind.
I'm sorry. Am I missing something? What does asthma have to do
But
with
here's
it?
the thing. I will say this.
Okay.
I'm actually okay with my wife, like, having sex with me if I was in a coma. I'd be fine with that.
That's crazy.
Why? What's crazy about it? Why should she deprive herself because I'm in a coma?
I think when we're talking about like sexual experience, consent is definitely the foundation in terms of you're not only considering your experience, but you're also considering your partner's.
No, I'm just considering mine. Like, I just want to have a good time. So I wake her up with my penis.
Yeah, I think it's very harmful to not consider your partner's experience when engaging in intercourse, because it is a mutual experience.
Why does you think she does that to me then? Do you
Does
think she
what?
just doesn't respect me very much, that she would wake me up like that? Like, I just wake up and she's literally writing me? Don't you think that's horrible? for her
What
to
if
do?
she like you woke up with her like using her teeth?
What do you mean?
Oh, Scott's
What do you mean?
I really don't want to talk about the sex life you have with your wife. Can we make it maybe less about
this
you?
is just
and
this is super easy for us to get down to this crazy ass idea you have.
I don't live in New York.
I know, but inside the state of New York, do you really think the state of New York is getting adequate political representation on Capitol Hill with two fucking people?
Well, that's why you have the Senate and the House, and the House. is
Two
based on-
people who are your senator. You really think
Every
that
state gets two senators.
100 people are representing 330 million people? At the very top, it's one person who's representing 330 million people's
So are you
interests.
advocating that we shouldn't have government?
No,
at all?
what I'm saying to you is that, like, it's very silly for me to look at an argument like you're making and say, oh my God, 100,000 people are going to be in charge, or 200,000 people are going to be in charge. Like, ultimately, one person's in charge.
So you're saying
Ultimately, one person's in charge.
but there's still checks and balances. That one person isn't a king.
There
They don't
still
have
would be checks and
tyrannical
balances with
monopoly
limited
over all
voting.
Power in the guard.
There's still checks and balances with limited voting.
Yeah, but we still do not get to decide who is in our legislature as a voting body, we do not get to decide who is
You
in
would
the
still
legislature.
have people from within your various communities who would be voters, and they would decide who it is that went to represent you on Capitol Hill.
That sounds very expensive and very pointless, if I'm being honest.
How is that expensive? Okay, fine.
Because you
Then
have
if
to pay
wanna-
for all their
Then if you
housing.
want to do that, there's another way you could do this too. If you didn't want to do like the civil service way, you could do one vote per household. That would limit the voting significantly. Hang on.
Okay.
And it would be not expensive at all. But
Okay.
there's even another way that you can do it on top of that.
Alrighty.
Right? But let's just start with like one household voting. Same thing.
Let's do it.
You can eliminate whatever this like perceived cost is that you have. Another thing you could do is just eliminate anybody being able to vote until they reach the same age that they could become president of the United States.
Is that not 35? Mm-hmm. So you think that everyone under 35 should lose the right to vote?
Why shouldn't everyone under 35
That
be
was the
able?
most boomer shit I've ever
Why
heard
shouldn't
in my
everybody
life.
under 35 be able to be the president of the United States?
Well, because they don't have the... But they're still...
Why? Answer the question.
Because they do not yet have the experience in politics to run an entire country.
So
but just
good,
because
yeah,
you can't
exactly.
run okay, Andrew. But just because you can't run an entire country doesn't mean that you should still not have the right to have one singular vote. It's one vote.
What are you talking about?
Yes, you can't be the president, but you are still susceptible to the laws. You can have a kid at 35. You can have a house at 35.
So,
Like,
what does that have to do with anything? But you can't be president.
below
Can't be
35,
president. Yeah.
legislatively,
Yeah.
below 35,
Yeah.
from 18 to 34, all of these people are impacted at the same level.
No, they're not all impacted at the same level. In fact, I would say...
Can they
I
all
would
go to
say-
jail for committing a crime?
Yeah, so I would say the
Then
opposite.
yes, they're
I would
impacted
say
as
like
well.
people between the ages of 18 and like 25 are mostly living at home, right? And their parents are the ones who are mostly impacted by legislation, not them. And
That
their
sounds
parents
like a skill issue.
and their parents should actually probably have more say than them. Their parents actually have more autonomy than they do because they're dependents on them, right? Completely dependent upon them. It's like, if I look at the trends, it seems to me like if you eliminated from 18 to 25 or from 25 to 35, if the founders didn't think you should be president of the United States till you were 35, I don't think they wanted you to vote either. And you know what? That's why it was never law. Voting
Andrew,
rights
this is
are
some
affirmed.
This is some old shit.
That's not an
dog.
argument.
This
That's
is
not an
giving-
argument.
Well, I mean, the reason why
Give
you're
me the
saying this is
argument.
because you're young, you're old. Like, you are not applicable to this law.
What did that have to do with anything?
You're trying to govern a group of people that you are not a member of.
So?
That's the issue.
So what?
Everyone should be representative government.
So how old do you think the average person who's in Congress is?
Hella old, and we
they're
hate
representing all of you. What do
that.
you
And
mean?
I hate that.
So you think that like 19-year-olds are going to be better governing than 60-year-olds?
No, but I don't think an 80-year-old would be a representative government.
Yeah,
I'm
but
glad Mitch McConnell's
80-year-olds are
stepping down. Too
dying in
old.
their depends. They're not governing. What do you mean?
Yes, they are.
No, they're
Sleepy
not.
Joe.
Sleepy Joe, who is in his 80s, now has cancer, and he's not president because he went off the deep end.
I know.
Your
And
co-
Trump is in his 70s, and Mitch McConnell is in his 80s.
Listen,
All of these people
your
are hella
presidents,
old.
your presidents and congressmen are running like between the late 40s to 50s to 60s. You don't really think that replacing them with 20-year-olds is a good idea, do you?
I don't think we should replace them with 20-year-olds, but
Why
I'd
not?
settle for
Why
a
not? Wait,
smooth
why
40.
not? Why not?
Well, they'd have to be elected first. No?
Yeah, I know, but even if they were, don't you think that would still probably not be the worst that wouldn't be a good idea?
If they were elected through a democratic representative democracy.
Don't you think they would do a
I would
worse
not have a
job
problem
though
with that.
than 40, 50, 60-year-olds would?
We don't know who it is. You can't just say universally, I think a 20-year-old would be worse if they are
Lord.
elected democratically.
Well, why do you think our founders thought that 35 years old was the minimum?
I think the founders thought 35 should be the minimum because you need experience in government to be the head of the government.
No
which I agree
experience
with.
in government is even required to become the president of the United States. 0.
Sure.
So why this age of 35?
Well, because you have to have lived in this country for long enough to understand it on a basic level.
Because they also thought you just didn't have the requisite experience probably in life to govern at all.
That's fair. To govern the entire country, I would say that
To govern
someone under-
anybody?
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think so.
Well,
I
then why
mean,
can't
why
why-
is it that they didn't let people vote? Why do you think they didn't want people to vote?
I mean, dude, they were kind of fucked up. I mean, do you really want to base all of your beliefs on the founding fathers? They owned slaves.
So?
So
The whole world owned slaves.
just because a lot of people do something doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, we were some of the first to take people out of slavery, especially the West.
Pretty sure that was England. France did it second.
The West, then?
That's
That's the West. England.
That's not America.
That's the West, which is what I said. The
Do you know
West.
difference? You said we were the first as in America.
The
no?
West is what I said.
I mean,
The
I don't
West.
think we're the same country as England. Sure, we're like
Yeah,
all
but
in
we're
the
part
same
of the
hemisphere.
West, right?
Yeah,
Like
but
England.
We are not run by the same government as England.
Yeah,
We
but
fought a whole
but
war
we're
about
part
it.
of the West, and I said the West is the ones who.
You can't
took
take
us-
credit for something another country did, dog.
Well, first of all, many of the people who came here from England, right? The idea of the repudiation of slavery came from those very same dogmas.
What time
so,
is it, Brian,
so I don't know what you're talking
We're
about.
at 4:30.
We're at 4. Okay, dude, you've just spent the last hour trying to defend the belief that both sexes should be somehow disenfranchised from voting. This whole one per household, the one marriage system, and I think fundamentally you have not been able to create an appeal to
Why are
how
we
this
in
would
like
work
closing
practically.
statements here?
Well, because we're supposed to be debating feminism. We never even got to it.
Well, this would be a key component to this, actually. But I'm actually fine with this if you want to move it on to that. Like, but
I
here's
mean,
the thing:
if you
you
wanna
never
keep
made
doing
a
it, we
single
can.
argument.
The argument is that people should be legislatively represented and allowed to vote.
Yeah,
in a
that's an
representative
assertion.
Democracy.
That's just an assertion, not an argument. That's just like, I think so.
The argument is if people are impacted by the laws
Okay.
that legislators create, then they should have a say in who those legislators are.
Yeah, but
whether it's a small say,
but that's a
okay.
performative contradiction because you said that people who are affected by laws who A, don't live here, or B, are younger than a certain threshold should be
It's not a
disenfranchised.
performative contradiction. It's the point of democracy.
No, it's
is
listen.
that we should be represented by a representative
I
government.
need you to understand this logically. That you're performing
It
a
doesn't make
contradiction.
sense logically because it's a logical fallacy. You were arguing a logical fallacy.
No, what's the fallacy?
The fallacy is that you're trying to essentially stop stupid people from voting by
That's
making
not
sure that
a
less
fallacy.
people
That's
can
not a
vote.
logical fallacy.
Well, you didn't let me finish the sentence.
Okay.
You're trying to stop stupid people from voting by making it so that less people can vote, which is in turn taking away the power of the voter.
What's the fallacy?
Well, you're trying to empower voters by taking away voters'
Yeah, how
power.
is that a
That's
logical fallacy?
You can't empower voters by taking away their power.
How am I trying to empower voters? What
I
are you
thought the whole
talking
point
about?
is that you're trying to combat tribalism and that you want smart people's votes to
What
not
does
be
that have to do with
nullified by
empowering
stupid
voters?
I thought that's why you're against NGOs, lobbyists, bribes. You want to empower the people.
I don't know what you're talking.
So
like,
you just don't want the country
I don't even
to
know
be
what you're talking
represented?
about. What I'm saying
Ooh,
to
he's
you is
getting
that if you want to
grumpy.
eliminate tribalism, you don't want to have nothing but an unlimited amount of people voting, where NGOs can mark to the stupid people and bend them to their will, and now have that entire bracket for whatever it is their political agendas are.
So again, why not just get rid of NGOs? Why is, oh my God, NGOs are a problem.
Would you
Let's
like
make
to-
sure less people can vote.
Gee, I'd never thought of that. Why don't we get rid of NGOs, the people who are utilizing tribalism so that they exist? Boy, I wish I had thought of that.
You're utilizing tribalism?
No, they're utilizing tribalism so they exist.
Okay, but you're a political pundit. You have the power to help people.
Uh-huh.
Why not promote a stance that is actually useful to them instead of trying to take away their vote?
Great. A stance that would be actually useful to them would be having their well-informed votes not nullified by non-well-informed voters of what you believe and I believe are more than the well-informed voters. That's exactly something I can do to help everybody.
But you're not helping everyone because stupid people still live here.
So what?
They still have a right to exist in a society.
Who's
where they are
taking
not
away their
dictated
right
by
to
smart-
exist in a society? Nobody.
Yes, you are, because they are.
How?
If they are still held accountable to the
Let's
same
do,
laws, but now have no right or vote or say in who is enacting those laws and who is representing them in government.
Like 17-year-olds?
Final statement from
They're
both of you on
children.
this, if you
They don't
Okay,
pay
yeah, final
taxes.
statement is like her position's a contradiction. She says everybody should be able to vote inside of a country where they are governed by the laws. The problem is that then she says all sorts of people who fall into the criteria of being supported by laws shouldn't be able to vote. It's literally a performative contradiction. Then she moves to my view and agrees with my view that mostly that stupid people outnumber smart voters, and when you're talking about ill-informed voters, that NGOs often take advantage of them, or I mean, always take advantage of them. She literally agrees with all of this, but somehow still thinks it's a better idea to allow this to continue because I don't know. She never really gave an argument for that. I don't really actually know why.
My turn?
Yeah, you can respond. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I mean, I get that you don't understand why, and I get that you don't understand my argument, and I'm sorry. I hope one day you do. But What I will say is generally, yes, it's annoying that stupid people are allowed to vote, even though they sometimes make poor choices and fight against their own self-interest. Yes, we don't like that. Yes, we don't agree. We do agree that lobbyists and NGOs have way too much power in setting precedents for laws. Those are both things that we mutually agree upon. However, I do not think that it is fair to create a limited democracy that in turn disenfranchises voters on the basis of being stupid. I don't think that there is any way to practically enact that. I don't understand why we would do that.
You could enact it with a constitutional convention. That's how you would do it.
And you don't think that the millions of people who now have lost the right to vote, they'd be like, okay.
Well, they wouldn't have a choice.
I mean, sure. Protests, riots, there's all sorts of ways that people have fought against a government. I mean, you're basically trying to call the country's bluff on whether or not they care about having the right to vote, which I think is just stupid. I think personally it's pointless, and I think that the function of a democracy is to make sure that everyone who has to abide by these laws is represented in government. Is that flawed? Yes.
That's not even true.
Are you going to let me finish? Did I interrupt you?
Let's let her finish, then we're moving on.
Oh, we're moving on.
We're going to move
Okay.
on. So finish your thing, then we're going to move on.
Okay, so anyway, back to my statement. Yes, this government is flawed. Yes, NGOs have too much power. Yes, it's annoying when stupid people do stupid things. But at the same time, the right to vote is a human right under a representative democracy in the United States of America. To take that away from voters is not the answer to creating a more educated voting body. Like, just genuinely, it's just not.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We have a couple.
If you had government programs which promoted the nuclear family or the cross-generational family at a propaganda level, national level, like we would do with patriotism during a war, things like that, do you think that we would have more or less as it came to traditional family units, more or less?
More or less family units if we put out propaganda? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it depends on how effective the propaganda is, but sure. I mean, we probably would have more traditional family units.
Right. So then if you do a promotion for alternative family units, that would erode that, right?
For alternative, you mean?
Well, necessarily, if it's going to increase the amount of traditional family units, if there's national propaganda to move towards that.
I didn't say necessarily. I said likely, but.
Okay, but even likely, then it would be likely the other way around.
Sure, it would be likely the other way around, that if we put out propaganda for something, that people would latch onto it, as people do.
Sure. And do you agree with me that alternative family units is the propaganda which is now produced mostly out of leftist institutions, out of feminist institutions, and out of feminist propositions to government?
Well, remember, we're talking about my version of feminism, not
your version. Your
right.
version does that, right?
Have I given you much of I don't think I've told you much about my version of feminism.
Yeah, I think you have. That's your movement. So you just got done saying that you would propagate or you would support the government itself pushing propaganda for alternative family units, right?
Wait, that's not. No, I didn't say that. I mean,
wouldn't?
We can watch this back, but what do you mean by that?
Like at the national level, the government doing things like putting LGBTQ flags all over the White House, maybe putting the White House in an LGBTQ flag, perhaps having NGOs, non-government organizations, which are left-wing think tanks, working hand-in-hand with government to push alternative family units, which are staunchly feminist and psychological institutions, things like that.
Okay, so, I mean, we could bring up psychology, but I'm not sure what that had to do with that. But look, so we can say, these are fine. These things are maybe working towards normalizing those types of family units. Mm-hmm. Calling them propaganda seems like a loaded way to say that. And that's fine. If you want to use loaded terms like that, you can. That's
we can unload it. I agree with you. Propaganda has a negative connotation. I just don't know a better way to say it that people understand.
So you think that the normalization or the attempt to, normalize something is necessarily propaganda, or you think that there's a difference there?
No, I just said, I think propaganda has a negative connotation, definitionally a negative connotation. But when I say the word propaganda, I think most people understand what I mean by that word, meaning there's a national campaign towards X.
A national okay. I mean, if all you're saying by a national campaign towards X is that people want people to be accepted as being gay, or people want to be seen as normal for having a gay family where they have, two parents of the same sex and children that live in that household. if that's what you mean, then sure, I'm fine with the United States doing things like putting flags on their building, but not for that purpose. The reason that I'm fine with that, something like putting a pride flag up during Pride Month, is because that's a representation of civil rights. Actually, I spoke, by the way, a little plug for my YouTube channel. I spoke at the Florida Senate about a month ago about this. It's an infringement on constitutional rights to not allow government entities to do that. Historically, the Supreme Court has ruled that way, by the way. But that is a promotion of the civil rights of those people, not a promotion of their lifestyle. Now, while it might also
Wait, hang on. Back up for me real quick. Did you just say that it's unconstitutional to govern for states to govern what now? Flags? Back that up. I just want to make sure I get this right.
Right. Yeah. It's so in the instances, and this is just a descriptor of historically how it's been. The Supreme Court has ruled it unconstitutional to regulate the types of speech that government entities can employ.
Government entities being.
Do you know what a government entity is?
I'm just asking you. So no, that
I'm just curious. Like, I just didn't know if you genuinely didn't know.
You do realize that you could have proprietary definitions of things that may not.
I think it would be charitable to assume, that we're kind of using similar terms. Well, that's fine.
Well,
I think
hang on.
a government
Do you mean state government? Do you mean federal government? Do you mean local government?
Historically, both. The Supreme Court.
Right. So when we say government entities, I'm just trying to untangle it. That's it.
Sure. I mean, okay. Sure. Yeah. Government entities historically, both on the federal level and the state level.
Okay. So like the Confederate flag,
historically, the Supreme Court has ruled it unconstitutional for that to be infringed upon.
Okay.
Now, the issue there can be a different argument against maybe why we shouldn't allow them to do it. Maybe it's not because it's unconstitutional, but maybe there's some other reason why we should infringe on their free speech.
Do you think we should?
On
the Confederate flag?
That would be a conversation about, what's the usefulness, what kind of violence. No, it'd be a
conversation about whether or not you're consistent in your view that because states can do this, they should be able to do this, or they should do this.
Okay, that's not true. Look,
what
I was saying was that take the instance of, putting up can I say the word swastika?
I would just say Swazi.
Swazi, yeah. I put up a nice 1942 flag up, on the state building or something like that. And that causes some riot or that causes some violence or something like that. There might be an argument there to say, well, because it's had this specific negative outcome, then we should restrict them from doing that. However, that's not the case with the symbolization of, Pride Month, the gay flags that are put up on buildings. The intention there is to represent the civil rights of those people. That would be like saying you can't put up American flags.
This is a civil rights issue on either end.
Do you think that the Civil War was a civil rights issue?
No, it's a civil rights issue on either end for the flag itself. So you can't say, so if you say, well, this is negative, right, or this is positive, just because one is negative doesn't mean it's not the same civil rights issue that you're pointing at here. So if you're pointing at states historically can't say anything, or government entities can't say anything about what types of flags are put up on is it state property? Is that what you're referencing?
Right. So government buildings.
Yeah, government buildings. Then it would still be a civil rights issue if you're saying that they shouldn't put up the Confederate flag. That would still be a civil rights problem.
When I asked you, do you think that the Civil War was a civil rights issue, do you think that the Confederate flag represents the civil rights of African Americans?
No.
Okay, right. So that's the symmetry breaker here. And then there's also the
Well, what do you think a civil right is?
Do you think that the
Don't ask me a question before you answer my question. What do you think a civil right is?
Look, a civil right is, something, it's actually, I think, pretty vague in our legal language. But a civil right is something like a human right that most people would call
so like you have a right to put that flag up. Okay,
no,
great. No. I have a right to put that flag up too?
Okay, see, that's where the confusion is. So I'm talking about when I say, government entities have the right to put up like pride flags. The pride flag is the symbol of the civil rights of gay people to get married, own property, not be, have their house raided while they're having sex or something like that.
Okay. That's an assertion. So let's start with this. So you just making the claim like It is true that this flag represents this. That's great. It represents that to this group of people. I would make the same argument with the Confederate flag. Same exact argument. That's great that it represents a negative thing towards this group of people, but it represents a positive thing towards this group of people. It would be the same thing with the LGBTQ flag. It'd be the same argument both ways.
No, look, the problem here is that the condition that I gave for, it being fine for them to use this form of free speech is the fact that it represents the civil right of that group of people. But the Confederate flag, doesn't represent the civil rights of who?
It would represent the civil rights of any people who wanted to see consistency so that they can have their flag up if they so chose. That would still be a civil right.
That isn't, maybe there's some vagueness on the civil rights thing, but I don't think that you think that, putting a flag up wherever you want on whatever property you want is a civil right. You don't believe that, right?
I think that if you were going to be consistent with your view, you would need to believe that.
That's not, okay, this isn't answering my question. You don't think that it is a civil right to display
I think it's a civil right if you put up a gay flag
not sure
on
why you
government
interrupted me.
buildings. Well, I'm trying to answer the question because you said I wasn't answering it. If you put it up on
I
a
have to
government,
re-ask it for you to
if you
answer
put
it.
it up on a government, you didn't ask me a question.
I was in the middle of asking you the question.
You said
and
I'm not
clarifying.
getting the answer, so I was just giving you the answer.
So look, the question was, do you think that it's a civil right to see your flag equally displayed? Because that was what you started to say.
No, I think that it would be equally consistent to say if you can have an LGBTQ flag flying on some state building and that's constitutional, then you'd have to say the same thing about a Confederate flag.
That the argument was from the fact that that flag represented the civil rights of that
I mean,
group.
that's nice. What I'm telling you is that that's an assertion. Like, demonstrate the assertion.
That's an assertion based off of the Supreme Court historically ruling it that way. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not making I can make a moral claim, and we can talk about like why people shouldn't, because I think there might be like violence ensued by one versus the other, et cetera. But
Okay, so why should you be able to have the gay flag up but not the Confederate flag?
Because I think that one represents the civil rights of a group, whereas the other one doesn't. One is more likely to incite violence. I don't think that the pride flag being up is more likely to incite violence.
heritage is part of civil rights?
I think that do I think heritage is part of civil rights?
Yeah. When you're talking about the historical use of the LGBTQ flag, for instance, this is going to have some type of like historical meaning to the people in which that flag represents, right?
Right.
Okay, isn't the Confederate flag going to have the exact same thing? It's going to have some kind of historical meaning when it comes to family lineage for people who live in the South, for people who, they had ancestors who fought in this war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be part of their heritage and history. So don't you think that that would have specific meaning to them as well?
Right, but there might, like I said, be overriding considerations, like if hanging that flag caused violence or something like that. Obviously, you would say, like, okay, if we started hanging up Confederate flags and then more violence ensued against, like, African Americans, you would say we probably shouldn't hang it, right?
So then, by that metric, are you saying that if LGBTQ flags incited violence in people who were not LGBTQ, we should not hang LGBTQ flags?
Incited violence because of the flag itself? Like, if it would have to be a
that
large
would be
amount,
the same thing.
It would have to be a large amount of violence.
Yeah,
It would have
so
to be
as
a lot
long
of
as, so
violence.
basically what you're saying then, just to make sure I got your view right, what you're actually saying here is as long as people who don't like the LGBTQ flag being up go ahead and commit a bunch of violence, they should probably take the LGBTQ flag down.
There would be multiple solutions to that, but that could be one of them. Yeah, if there was, like, let's say that was the only way to get people to stop being violent, that might be an alternative. Now, that's saying that that's, like, necessary to do to stop the violence. Now, if there's other things where we can preserve, like the protection of the displaying of it for civil rights purposes, for the representation of civil rights, and at the same time lower the violence in some other way, then yeah, we should do that alternative. Do you think that's controversial? No,
but now you're just switching the position, because initially what you said was this flag, if it's causing violence because it offends them so much that they can't help but become violent at the very look of it, or whatever it is, whatever it is that makes them respond negatively and commit violence because of this flag. All that would actually be doing is incentivizing people who are oppositional to the LGBTQ flag to commit violence, because then you would want to take that flag down, right?
Well, for one, I would say, listen, I would hold the same standard. Let's go back to this, because I would hold the same standard if we had a rule where we said, okay, we can display the Confederate flag and we can display the pride flags, whatever. if there started to be violence committed on one end because of the Confederate flag, I would say like, okay, well, before we move to, taking the flag down, we should move to stopping the violence to whatever metric we can. Now, there might be other reasons why I think like maybe we shouldn't display a Confederate flag. I think the Confederate flag in and of itself represents the negative part of the history that shouldn't be displayed as if we're proud of it. I think it represents slavery. You don't think it does?
No, it doesn't represent slavery. It represents the heritage of people who had family members who died in the war on behalf of their beliefs.
And their beliefs were?
Well, the beliefs were to their state. It was being loyal to their state. Most Confederate soldiers didn't have any views on slavery, really, one way or the other. This was the higher-ups who had views like this. So the average soldier, in fact, there's one famous case of them saying, why is it that you're fighting in this war? You're so poor, you can't own a slave. And the response was, because y'all are here. So what that means is that as the North was invading the South, there was a lot of incentive for people to go and fight against it. They called it the War of Northern Aggression. And many of them had cause. They got their houses burned down, things like this during northern marches to assist in combat in that war. And I'm sure that people are very proud of the heritage that they come from in the South, from people fighting for the core beliefs and on behalf of their families, even if you don't like the cause itself. The cause itself is still very much baked into the American history, just like for instance, I couldn't ban the LGBTQ flag because of HIV, right? I couldn't be like, well, that's a stain on our history, the fact that there was a bunch of gay sex parties and they were giving it to each other. I couldn't do that, right? I don't think that you can make a good, honest argument as to why it is that people couldn't be proud of the heritage of their family fighting in the Civil War.
Look, the flag is a symbol of the leaders of that war, right?
No, it's not.
The people, you just admitted this, the people who respond in that way, we're fighting because you guys are here, they're there because they're there. They live there, they're trying to protect their homes and properties. That's perfectly fine. The problem is the people who were starting those wars were the ones who were using those flags. That's like saying like, well, so-and-so wasn't a Nazi and, well, I don't know if I can say that word, fuck. So-and-so wasn't a, Schnazi in World War II. They just had families that were, Schnazi members. Or maybe they were just fighting because they thought it was like a good thing. They were fighting the other powers that invaded. You wouldn't say certainly then that like they should allow Schnazi flags on government buildings, right?
If the standard is that we're allowed to put up the flag of our choosing because it has some representation value that we see it as, like let's say the people saw the Schnazi flag as being something other than I heart Hitler, I wouldn't see a problem with that. No, of course not.
Okay, so even though that it is linked to that, it is linked to support of Hitler, and the
LGBTQ flag is linked to HIV.
Okay.
That's how,
just
people see it. People see it as like, oh, wow, AIDS, right? They see the rainbow flag. I think a lot of people think AIDS.
Yeah, that's fine. But there's not like gay leaders that are out there like pushing for AIDS, right?
There's not like anybody out there pushing for the Confederacy. Who's pushing for the Confederacy?
I live in the Deep South. There's people pushing for the Confederacy.
Who? Give me a single actual institution of any kind, anywhere, or any real body of people anywhere who's pushing for the Confederacy.
What do you think there have been moves historically to cede some of the states again.
That's not the Confederacy.
Because of it might be good, but you could say something like there's wrong under, there's something bad happening in like a counterfactual sense. Like maybe, their happiness level is maybe like an 8 with this person that is the only person that they've ever met, the only person they've ever interacted with. And then you could take, there's a possible world where they meet somebody who's far better. Maybe, they like the temperature the same, in the house all the time or something like that.
But
or they want the same amount of kids or something like that. So
you can make that argument for everything.
There could be. Okay.
Yeah, you could say, well, Andrew, you're in a very happy marriage and you're very happy with your marriage, but there could be a world which exists in somewhere where you could have met a woman who's even better than Rachel. And so you could apply that universally to every marriage which exists currently, every relationship which exists currently across the board. I'm not sure how that would be helpful to this.
Right, but so remember what we were talking about was the sample size for the individual being very small. If you've had a larger sample size, then that kind of mitigates that factor there. So when, like, you look at somebody who has maybe two partners that they've dated before and they're marrying their third partner or something. They at least have a data set to look at, like, okay, well, here are the possibilities of things that I like and things I don't like. And I've kind of been able to weed through and have the opportunity of having a more fulfilling relationships with a third person, because I have been able to weed out, these are the type of people I maybe am not as compatible with.
Right,
Whereas
okay.
that person, the person who hasn't had any other experiences, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
No,
I'm not saying it's necessarily bad.
Well, it's actually strange, in fact, because they would still be at the mercy of the same thing. Perhaps, though, if they hadn't gone off and had the second or third relationship and had only stayed in the first relationship as a virgin and had nothing to compare it to, then in an alternative world, they would have been much happier by that standard. And that's like, it would be the same thing applied here.
Yeah, that. I'm fine with saying that those people in those relationships are happy, but there could be something where they are happier once they have a bigger data set. So it's obviously with more knowledge about the world, like you have the ability to pick and choose better, like you're more informed on the things that will make you happier, right?
Well, you become, I would agree that you gain more experience in the things that are happening around you, perhaps, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those are positive experiences or that you wish that you had known them.
Yeah, they don't have to necessarily. I'm just saying that with the bigger data set, you have more of a likelihood of finding the thing that's going to make you more happy.
But wouldn't this imply that the data set which was done on virgins and their happiness is somehow smaller than the data set which is done on people who've had 2 or 3 partners? Unless you're just saying, well, it's just trivially true that the people who've had 2 or 3 partners have had sex with more than one person, so we can just view them in a different light. It's like...
No, maybe just to clarify, I'm not talking about the data set. Do you mean the data set of people like surveyed? Are you saying that you think that I'm saying that?
No. I think what you're saying is that women who have had 2 or 3 partners necessarily have more experience than the virgin. And
They
so
have a bigger
because
data
of that,
set, yeah.
they don't know what they're missing.
The virgins, like people who are virgins, don't know what they're
Yeah.
missing? Yeah, I think they have less of a data set.
But why would okay. They have less of a data set when it comes to sleeping with more people, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but why would that be a bad thing?
Right, because they have the possibility of looking for people or things that they're more compatible with. So let's just say the virgin, this person who's dated one person only has access to the data set of this person that makes them 8 out of 10 happy or something like that. Whereas the person who's had access, and engaged in intercourse or maybe had just, personal romantic relationships with other people, they have access to data sets of people who make them a level 10 happy or a level 8 or a level 7 or something like that. They have more access. They have access to more data, right? That individual has more access to data about what causes them to be happy in a relationship.
Okay, but again, couldn't I just apply this to anything? Couldn't I be like, well, there's not enough of a data set for us to really determine that if people don't drink gasoline, that they wouldn't be happier if they didn't have the experience of drinking gasoline before.
We do have we unfortunately have data on that, and it
We have
turns
data
out
on
really,
virgins
really
too.
bad.
And it's a pretty large sample size of virgins.
Okay, so what's being confused is not that the amount of people who are virgins.
No, it's not being confused.
There is, because you're saying the sample size of virgins that we have.
You're equivocating.
Hold on. Breathe.
Yeah,
You're saying
equivocating.
right now
I'll show you.
that the amount of virgins that we have is less. I'm not saying that. We could have 50 virgins and 50 people who have had sexual
I
experiences.
know you're not
with
saying
one other
that. What
person.
you just got done saying was what we do understand the correlation between gasoline and people's happiness. And it's like, okay, but we do understand the correlation between virginity and virgin's happiness in marriage. It's the same thing back and forth. What would be the experience differential there? Why shouldn't I go drink gasoline to know that drinking gasoline, it probably isn't going to make me happy?
Okay, so let's get this clear first. I will say this, the person who decides to go drink gasoline, let's just say you have 2 people, one who has never drank gasoline, the other person is going to. Both of them have the same knowledge about the facts about what that would do to them. But there's also, some non-zero probability that they could
Love it.
live a happy life and love drinking gasoline, and
Sure.
that's their thing.
Which there are people, I guess, who do. But
there,
anyway,
there
go
are
ahead.
freaks. But yeah, look. So these people, the person who did in fact drink the gasoline, and regardless of whether or not the outcome was good, if they hated it, if they loved it, whatever, that person does in fact, whether that's for the worse or better, have a bigger data set to go off of. Do you agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah,
But should they do it?
should they? No, obviously not.
Well,
Because
then
we
we're
know
back to
about
this.
we know about the significant negative outcomes.
Same.
Of that.
I would just make the same argument back for this: that if they shouldn't drink gasoline because we know that there's significant bad outcomes for that, but your argument for they should have more than one sexual partner, even though we know the negative outcomes for that, and you say, but there's a possibility that they just don't know what they're missing. I could just make the same argument with gasoline.
Well, just to be clear, because going back to the prompt wasn't that people should have multiple partners. The prompt is more so about, and maybe you can read it back specifically, but it was about the fact that if you're looking for a partner, the main concern shouldn't be the amount of partners that person has.
I don't think it's a main concern.
The prompt was, you shouldn't care about body count if you want a relationship.
Yeah, shouldn't.
Right, and by that I mean that shouldn't be your main concern. I mean, I'm allowed to clarify, right?
Sure.
Okay, sure.
I think
So,
that's totally fair. So, yeah, so you're not actually saying that shouldn't
that in no
be a
case
factor.
you should ever care. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you should care in some cases, of course.
Yeah, like so if it is the case that I have good evidence to support that a woman staying a virgin, right, and she's religious, like for instance, let me give you an example. If you're a religious man, right, and you would have certain virtues which are attributed to your religion.
Sure.
One of which could be to marry a woman who's virtuous, and a sign of chastity. A sign of virtue could be chastity. That's in Christianity, for instance. Chastity is overwhelmingly large when it comes to the idea of virtue. So you would think men like that actually should be selecting for body count, right?
They should if the person isn't currently acting in that way. So the problem that you run into here is, like, obviously people who were prior atheists can be reformed. They can find Christianity, they can find God.
Totally agree.
And
Yep.
maybe they've had some, harlot past where they've gone out and they've slept with 50 men and done all these terrible things and extorted people and all sorts of things. But when that person, and maybe this could end up being like a semantic thing, but when that person, comes to the faith and they find God, that body count still exists, right? Unless you think that it doesn't.
It still does.
Right. So you agree that there could be a perfectly suitable partner for a man who is a Christian, right? And one of the things that happened to be in her past was that, she had all of these sexual partners, but now she has, found Christ. So in that case, yeah, it wouldn't be right for him to consider that if she's changed.
Yeah, no, it would be totally right for him to consider it.
Why would he consider that?
Because
if
it
she's
would still show a pattern of not upholding the same virtues he's looking for.
in the past, but not currently. But if she's currently upholding those values,
Well, your past behaviors is generally a really good indication of your future behavior.
yeah, that's perfectly fine to say. But if he has really good overriding evidence that she will never do that again, that she will go forward and be,
I don't know what evidence he
Virtuous or
could
whatever.
have for that.
let's just say he has some evidence, regardless.
Yeah,
but if he has
some,
that evidence,
yeah, if you were to say like he had a crystal ball in front of him,
Right.
and he could see the whole future, sure, I wouldn't dispute that. But that
Right,
would
of
be
course.
baked. That would be baked into the fact of knowledge itself. He has pre-existing knowledge this will not happen, or some really overwhelmingly good, compelling evidence it wouldn't. But absent that, which I would argue in most cases they wouldn't have, then it would show a pattern of behavior against the same virtues he's looking for, where he could select for somebody who's upheld those virtues.
There's also, so that's fine to say that if he has reason to believe that she'll still engage in those behaviors, regardless of whether or not she's in a committed relationship with him, that's a kind of separate question, but an adjacent question. Because the question is she going to be promiscuous in this relationship? Presumably, like if you take somebody who has like a large body count, they're usually not in relationships with those people.
No, it's not. Well,
Unless you disagree.
I dispute the premise here a bit. I'm going to quibble a little bit, but I think I'm fine quibbling on this point.
Okay.
So my quibble is it's not really necessarily even a sign that she will be promiscuous, though I think it's there. Only a sign that she's perhaps not upholding virtues. She doesn't have a pattern of upholding virtues. So I think that, like any behavior, like if you're a practicing Christian or a practicing Muslim, let's say, they hold set values for what virtues are. And just like language, communication, and all forms of different habits, which are formed in people, they're done by exercising them over and over and over again. So if you're a person who is high in virtue, you're probably consistently exercising virtues as part of your habit, right? You're stopping on let's give a stupid example, like you're always stopping on the side of the road to help people, or you're always, you know what I mean? That becomes habit after a while. After a while, you almost can't help but pull off on the side of the road to help somebody because it's so habitually built up in you. So I think that for them, this could be a great red flag sign that, wait, these habits, these virtue habits aren't really formed yet, especially if you're a new Christian, right? Or you just came to Christ in this sense. These habits haven't even had a chance to flower yet. And if you could select for somebody who's upheld them, why wouldn't you do that?
Right. So then it's not the necessarily body count thing. It's more so about whether or not the trend that happened in the past will continue, and whether or not that person will adopt to the virtues that you have.
It is body count, though, because body count would be the virtue which is being broken.
Right, but they're breaking that when they're not a Catholic or not a Christian, right? So it's kind of like you're saying, like, okay, well, I want to hold you to the standard of this religion where we have these specific virtues, but I'm going to hold your past self who's not involved in that religion to that standard. And that doesn't quite make sense. So there could be, and I think in most cases, probably, when you look at people who come to Catholicism or to the church in general, and they say, hey, I'm reformed, I want to get my life turned around, I want to stop drinking, I want to stop partying, whatever XYZ that you would find to be like vices. I think that it's probably likely that that person should take that as a strong consideration into the relationship.
You didn't actually give a reason for why that doesn't quite make sense, though. You said that doesn't quite make sense, but then you gave a reason that actually still makes sense. You can indeed hold people to your ethical worldview and ethical standard even before they adopted it. And you can say, based on the pattern of behavior pre-adopting my standard, you did not uphold to it, so I have good reason to believe you will not in the future, at least as of right now, until otherwise demonstrated, like we would do with all pattern recognition behavior. There, you can make delineation thresholds, but everybody voting has been a disaster. It's been terrible.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that by everybody being able to collectively vote rather than people at stake in the system, what's been able to happen is that the Treasury has been able to be robbed by the collective power of the vote. So what happens is politicians end up creating voting blocks. They pit the voting blocks against each other. And all of these various blocks are trying to raid the Treasury essentially for their own personal agendas. Every single block that I can think of, in fact, is trying to raid the Treasury based on an agenda.
Right, but presumably you think some of those agendas are good, and two, you think that generally there's also good outcomes from everybody voting, right?
No, there's generally not good outcomes from everybody voting.
There's not a single good outcome, or
I didn't say there's not a single good outcome. I'd never put it in a monolith, but
that's a question.
I just answered the question. I would not say that there's never a single good outcome.
Right. So you just happen to believe that the good outcomes don't outweigh the bad outcomes.
Well, yeah, that's how I would weigh anything when it came to the political process, right?
Right. So, okay, I mean, we can just take, for example, you think that it's generally good, just prima facie good, to protect individual freedoms, right? Like
to a degree.
Well, I think I can probably give you infinitely many cases where you would say it's good to protect I can give you
infinitely many cases in the opposition where you would think it was really good to limit them.
Probably not in the real world. Like I can take, for example, you waking up and breathing this morning. Mm-hmm. That's a right that's a personal freedom that should be protected.
Me waking up and owning a machine gun, is that a personal right that should be protected?
That's going to hinge on like an that's going to be some like empirical claim that I don't.
It's not an empirical claim.
Like whether or not you.
What do you mean?
No, whether or not I think that that's a right that should be protected is going to hinge on empirical data. So whether or not that causes more bad outcomes.
Can I own a nuke?
I think probably there would be really bad outcomes if you owned a nuke.
Yeah, probably. So you'd want to limit that, right?
Right.
What about a battleship with like Uzis strapped to it that did a like 360 turnstile, just mowing everything down? I should probably not have that either, right? Or hand grenades.
Right. And those are instances that we don't currently have. I'm talking about literally from you breathing to you sitting at the table to you holding a pen to you wearing a shirt to you being in the studio to being in America. Ooh, sorry. to you being able to drink water, all of those things are personal freedoms, and you believe that all of those things should be protected. And there's probably less of those like insane scenarios than
Breathing's not a right. What do you mean? You don't have a right to breathe. It's a function. It's a function of what you do.
You have a
There's
right
not
to
an empirical
life.
right to it.
Right, but you have a right to life, and stopping you from breathing.
Do
would
you
be
have a right to
stopping you.
life, or do you have a concept that you have a right to life?
Yeah, the right is the concept.
The concept,
remember?
yeah. So the idea here is the concept. Yeah, I'm not sure that people have a right to life. Like if you steal my TV, I don't think you have a right to life.
Well, sure, those rights can be overridden. Those are overriding
Because they don't
considerations.
exist. That's why. That
doesn't mean that
there's
they-
not really anything. So the concept here, right, it can be overridden and changed because the concept itself is flawed. The idea of rights themselves are flawed. So when you're talking about your like First Amendment right or something like this, when you talk about freedoms in general, yeah, I think that we have all sorts of duties which override those rights all the time.
Right. So, but you have to make the case that this is one of those instances where you should override somebody's rights. So when
Yeah, since
you say,
women
well,
started voting,
hold
it's
on,
been-
hold on, don't
well,
interrupt me. That's
You just told me to give you the instances.
very impolite. Very impolite.
Do you think that
But
I'm the only one cutting in?
I think I've probably cut in far less, but look, so you think that there's all of these instances where like you shouldn't have your right to breathe infringed upon, you shouldn't have your, your right to XYZ. That doesn't mean that those things aren't real just because they can be overridden. I don't know what the argument for that would be.
What that so the concepts themselves, right? These things are changeable concepts, right?
Yeah,
All of them are changeable.
The concept itself is,
And where does the concept exist? Does it exist in all brains or does it exist in one brain?
well, I think that people have different concepts of rights.
Right.
But what I am saying though is when people say I have a right to life, they're not saying I have a right to life in every single imaginable possible scenario. Do you know that?
Do you know that when you express things that you should express them precisely so that I know exactly what it is that you do mean? So when you
Okay,
say
sure.
when you say do you know when people say X, what they actually mean is Y? It's like, no, I don't actually know that, because from what you're saying is when people say X, this is it. You just leave it on rights. That's what people say. And it's like, now you clarify and say, well, when people say X, they really don't always mean X. Like, fair enough. I can grant that is true, but you didn't really make that case
You're not just
before.
granting that it's true, though. Here's what happened, though, is that you said that, there's instances where these rights can be overridden, right? So you do recognize that people, when they say you have the right to life, they aren't talking about the right to life in an absolute sense.
No. That's a pedantic way to look at my words. Maybe my words were sloppy there, right? It's just a way for me to categorize the words that you understand what I'm saying. So I can say override or something like this. If you want to pin me on it, I can use a different word. But the entire idea here, though, is that these are just concepts. Because they're just concepts, they're very changeable in the human experience as concepts. And they only exist in single brains. They don't exist in collective brains, right? They can't. Every single brain has to have some variation of this concept, right?
Sure, but people have general, agreements on what a concept means.
Sure.
So they can approximate as close as they can. But when somebody says, like I said, they have the right to life or they have the right to breathe, I would think that you know that they're not saying, and also just to reframe this, because you said it's like, oh, well, when people are saying they're X, you're saying they actually mean Y. No, I'm saying they mean something like X asterisk, to the right-hand corner
So
or
actually
something
Y.
like that. That's not what I said. I think that's kind
well,
of
it can't be
dishonest.
X and not X. So it has to be X actually means not X.
Right, but it could be X with an additional clause that's understood to be true. Like when you have conversations, there are things that you understand with people. Like there's social cues. I think people typically understand
I agree.
rights aren't
I'm just
absolute.
making sure that if there's a meaningful distinction, we untangle the meaningful distinction. If there's not, we don't.
Sure. Okay. So when people talk about rights, because I guess we'll just get 100% clear on this now. When people talk about rights, they're typically not talking about some absolute, ability to do anything, some entitlement to do anything no matter what.
Okay, I agree.
Sure. So
But I never thought that was in dispute. What was in dispute is the concepts themselves, right? So the idea is, well, I have a right to do X, and then somebody comes along and says, no, you don't, and puts a bullet in your head, right? Did he have the right, or did you have the right?
did the person who put the bullet into somebody's head have a right to do that?
Yeah.
Not per the person who they did it to.
Right, exactly. So then these are just concepts. They're individual. They're mind-dependent concepts for individual minds themselves. They're not even collectivized.
Well, there can be rights that we like agree upon.
Sure, you
Certainly
can
think that's
agree. You can agree to them, right? But you can't really say that when somebody else comes along and says, "But I have a right to violate your rights," that they don't have a right to do that. That's the problem with them, right?
They under your frame of rights, they don't have that. Per your standard, they don't have that right.
Yeah, but per their standard, they do.
Yeah, that's just trivially true. If you're
Yes,
just saying like
trivial, and trivial truths are true because they're true. So the thing is like, yes, it's trivially true, just meaning it's true, that if a person says, well, I have the right to kill you, and you say you don't have the right to kill me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know who actually here has the right to do what?
actually has the right?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Who here actually has the right to do something? Who here actually can actualize this right?
Okay, the question is who has the ability to do what they want to do? Mm-hmm. Well, obviously the person with the gun. Do you think
So
that
then
that's in dispute?
what right did that other person actually have?
Well, the person, okay, maybe we should get clear on what you mean by a right. What do you mean by right?
I've already told you like 50 times. It's entitlement absent of duty.
Yeah, so, okay, they have the right, and these rights are, like I believe that I have an entitlement, to my life.
Believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they believe that, to them, they had the right. To the other person, they did not have the right.
Right. So in this case, really what it boils down to is your rights are just force, right?